Chapter 1376. The strange area that Ning Xuanji had opened was the starting point for the fusion of the upper mortal world and the lower mortal world. The laws of space and time had no effect here. Therefore, the images of those who had been here would be left behind and would never disappear. This situation had appeared in many places where the space laws were distorted. It was an abnormal phenomenon. But the key problem was that Zhong Shenxiu's figure was imprinted in the deepest part of the upper mortal world and the lower mortal world. It was 10,000 years ago. What did this mean? It meant that after the great ancient calamity, those powerhouses had left the upper mortal world. But Zhong Shenxiu was here, like a bystander, watching the fusion of the two worlds. He had lived for 10,000 years. Or even longer. Zhong Shenxiu was a mystery to begin with. His origin was a mystery, his identity was also a mystery, and his strength was even more unfathomable. Previously, Chu Xiu thought that he was just a martial immortal. But in the end, he could fight against the sect master and Tao Lord of the Nine Heavens. Of course, this wasn't important. What was important was that he was here 10,000 years ago. Ning Xuanji could live for 500 years because of his strength. But if Zhong Shenxiu really lived for 10,000 years, what was the difference between this and the legendary longevity? Ning Xuanji naturally saw this scene as well. He frowned. Obviously, he couldn't figure it out. Chu Xiu asked, "Senior Ning, 500 years ago, have you heard of Zhong Shenxiu of the Sky of Freedom?" Ning Xuanji frowned and said, "I have vaguely heard of Sky of Freedom, but I have never seen Zhong Shenxiu, nor have I heard of this name. At that time, I thought that Sky of Freedom was just a secluded cultivation force overseas. I only knew that they were strong, but I didn't pay much attention to them. Including when Zhong Shenxiu made his move, I also thought that he was just a new powerhouse that appeared in the pugilistic world in the past 500 years. After all, the lower realm already had Dugu Weiwei and me. It's not a big deal for another to appear in 500 years. But now, I remember that I actually met Zhong Shenxiu before, 500 years ago? Of course not, if I had seen him 500 years ago, how could I forget him? More accurately, what I've seen should be a statue of him. When I was young, I found a statue in the ruins of a sect that had existed for thousands of years. That statue was of Zhong Shenxiu. Back then, I didn't pay much attention to it. I thought it was an ancestor of some sect. That's why I didn't remember that the statue was Zhong Shenxiu until now." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. Did that mean that Zhong Shenxiu had already existed thousands of years ago? But thinking about it, it was normal. He knew Zhong Shenxiu's habits. This person often got lost and always talked about karma. He never owed anyone karma. Even if he asked for directions, he would give the other party benefits to offset the karma. Perhaps in Zhong Shenxiu's eyes, the benefits he had given him were only worth the price of asking for directions. But for those who had benefited from it, it was a great fortune, a great fortune. Therefore, it was normal for people to build a statue to commemorate Zhong Shenxiu. At this time, Ning Xuanji had a faint smile on his face as he muttered, "Interesting, interesting. It's been a long time since I've encountered such an interesting thing." 500 years ago, Ning Xuanji thought that he had explored the entire lower realm. He didn't expect that after 500 years, there would be such an interesting thing happening in the lower realm. Looking at the wonderful scene of the two worlds merging in front of him, Ning Xuanji waved his hand and said, "All right, you can go do what you need to do now. Of course, you can stay here and take a look, but your realm isn't there yet. You're not on this path, so it's useless to watch." Chu Xiu nodded. The Daoist had just come to the lower realm. There were indeed many things waiting for him to deal with. However, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He looked at Ning Xuanji and didn't move. Ning Xuanji was stunned for a moment before he reacted. He sneered and said, "Kid, I'm a man of my word. How can I owe you a promise? Look at yourself, which heavenly layer are you at now?" Only then did Chu Xiu realize that he was already at the fifth heavenly layer. Actually, when Chu Xiu activated the yin and yang source, although Ning Xuanji had already guided most of the source out, there was still a part of it left in Chu Xiu's body. That part of the energy was just right. Ning Xuanji's control was extremely precise, just enough for him to break through the bottleneck of the fifth heavenly layer. However, as soon as he opened the door of that place, Chu Xiu saw Zhongxinxiu and was shocked. Therefore, he couldn't react to the changes in his body for a moment. Chu Xiu didn't feel embarrassed at all. He cupped his hands at Ning Xuanji and said, "Since that's the case, Senior can cultivate here. I'll take my leave first." After returning to Supreme Island, Pak Donglai and Hua Yingqi were still confronting each other. At the same time, they were also waiting for Chu Xiu. After seeing Chu Xiu, the two of them wanted a result. They wanted Chu Xiu to support them. Chu Xiu waved his hand and said, "The two of you just can't get over it. What's the point of fighting in such a small place like the East Sea? Now that the new era is coming, the vitality of the entire pugilistic world has risen a lot. Maybe it's not obvious because you're in the East Sea, but the Central Plains warriors have already changed. Both of you want to join my Kunlun devil cult, and I welcome both of you. There's no conflict. Later, I'll send someone to the East Sea to teach you some cultivation techniques and other things. You can also choose your own elite disciples to come to the Central Plains warriors to cultivate. Take a long-term view. Your future isn't just limited to these things in front of you." Pak Donglai and Hua Yingqi looked at each other. Although they still didn't see eye to eye with each other, since Chu Xiu had already said so, they could only cup their hands and said, "Yes, we will follow the cult master's orders." The overseas pugilistic world's forces were still alright in the past. But that was in the past. Now, any random sect of the Central Plains warriors might be stronger than overseas. However, no matter how small a mosquito was, it was still meat. Since they were fighting for providence, they couldn't give up overseas. Although there weren't many people in this place, there were still some of them. Before anyone noticed, it was best to take them under his command first. As for the Central Plains warriors, during the time when Chu Xiu and Ning Xuanji went overseas, the Daoist cultivators who descended to the lower realm could be said to have set off a huge wave, making the entire pugilistic world a mess. Although the Dao Master and the other powerhouses went to the South Sea to look for clues about the longevity heaven, the disciples they left behind followed their instructions and established sects in the lower realm. Among them, the Sanskrit sect and the Tianluo temple chose to settle in eastern Qi, while the Three Pure Palace chose to settle in West Chu. In fact, the atmosphere of the Dao sect in eastern Qi was the heaviest. However, the Dao Master might have some scruples about Ning Xuanji, so before he left, he ordered the Dao sect to settle in West Chu. The Star River Martial Arts Academy also settled in eastern Qi, while the World Sword sect chose West Chu. There were also many cultivators from Gu Zun's lineage and the second-class sects who settled in the pugilistic world. They mainly chose West Chu and Northern Yen. Eastern Qi belonged to the Central Plains, so there were too many forces in the pugilistic world. Settling in Eastern Qi was bound to cause a huge conflict. The Daoist cultivators had just descended to the lower realm. Even if they were powerful, they were not willing to fight at this time. Therefore, most of them chose the vast and sparsely populated Northern Yen and West Chu. At this time, in the Northern Yen Palace, the Northern Yen Emperor, Xiangli, was smashing the table in anger. "Bastard! How dare you? How dare they bully me like this? My temporary imperial residence has to give up land for their sections. Do they still have any respect for the Northern Yen royal family?" All these years, Xiangli had lived a comfortable life. The West Chu imperial court was naturally weak, so there was no need to mention it. Over in Eastern Qi, Lv Haochang was old and muddle-headed. He stubbornly held on and refused to die. He also refused to abdicate. If he didn't die, his sons probably wouldn't be able to resist killing him. There was no external threat. Within the Northern Yan, although there were some rising forces in the Northern Yan martial arts world, they did not dare to act presumptuously because of the Kunlun devil cult suppression. Therefore, this period of time had been the most stable and prosperous for the Northern Yan. Not long ago, a rising force in Northern Yan, the Vajra sect, one of the 8 sects, had occupied the temporary imperial residence that Xiangli had wanted to build for himself. They had even seriously injured the head of the imperial court. This was practically a provocation to the Northern Yan imperial court. Other than Xiangli, the Northern Yan's protector General Xiang Wu and Xiang Chong, who was in charge of the imperial consecration hall, were also in the main hall. Xiang Chong said in a low voice, "I'm afraid they really don't care about the Northern Yan imperial family." The Vajra sect's headmaster, Laughing Vajra, Song Wan, is a character. He had accidentally obtained the Vajra's Angry Vajra Heart Sutra from the Vajra department of the Great Light Temple. He has cultivated it to a level even stronger than the previous Vajra department's first seat. When the Yuan Qi in the Jianghu skyrocketed, he used this opportunity to enter the heaven and earth mystic state. Although this person cultivates the Vajra's Angry Eyes Heart Sutra, he is able to perfectly suppress the anger in his heart. He is even extremely slippery, always smiling whenever he sees someone. That's why he's called the Smiling Vajra. Regardless of whether he's facing the other sects of Northern Yan or the Northern Yan royal family, he's always extremely respectful and polite. Xiang Wu nibbled on a banana as he said, "That's right. That old man is quite a good person. He even gave me a cart full of bananas before. Why is he so full of himself now? Did he eat too many bananas?" Xiang Chong said lightly, "Full of himself?" Song Wan has always been the kind of person who bullies the weak and fears the strong. Now that he dares to challenge the Northern Yan imperial court, he must have found a new backer. How powerful is his backer? Even more powerful than the Northern Yan imperial court? Xiang Chong said in a low voice, "Is a martial immortal powerful enough?" The Daoist Prime Lord's fourth heaven martial immortal, Crimson Afterglow Venerable, Lu Tianyuan, has already established the Crimson Afterglow Divine Sect in the Northern Yan. Song Wan was the first to seek refuge and was taken in as a disciple. He was taught martial arts and fully responsible for the establishment of the Crimson Afterglow Divine Sect. He seized His Majesty's residence not for the Vajra sect, but to establish the Crimson Afterglow Divine Sect. After all, that land is one of the rare treasured lands of the Northern Yan. Chapter 1377. For the martialists of the lower realms, the main impact that the Daluo celestial martialists brought to the lower realms was the impact of their power. The strength of a martial immortal was terrifying. Not counting the people of the Kunlun devil cult, there were only 4 people in the lower realm who had reached this realm. Although there was a wave of vitality, for most people, it was only from the early stage of the Elysium opening stage to the peak, and from the true fire spirit cultivation stage to the Elysium opening stage. Martial Immortal was still an unattainable realm. Hearing that the other side was backed by the Daluotian martial artists, Xiangli also lost his temper. He dejectedly sat back on the dragon throne and unwillingly asked, "Could it be that we have no choice but to swallow this anger?" Xiang Wu swallowed the last banana and collapsed on the chair. "Your Majesty, it's time to change your way of thinking. The 3 countries no longer have the power to maintain the stability of the world. A martial immortal can crush mountains and break seas. He can fight against thousands of soldiers and horses. We are not qualified to compete with him. We, the Northern Yan, also have a backer. In other words, the Northern Yan is the territory of the great cult master Chu. If we are bullied, will the cult master Chu not show up? We can't do anything about this matter. Let's go to the Kunlun devil cult." Xiangli frowned slightly, "But I heard that the people of the Kunlun devil cult are not in the Northern Yan now." Before Chu Xiu left, he ordered Wei Shuya and the others to guard the territory of the Kunlun devil cult. Therefore, the Kunlun devil cult valued the southern region the most. After all, it was a place where the space of the two worlds overlapped. Although the two worlds were now connected and people could go to the lower realm at any time, they needed a heavenly key and could only be used by elite disciples. Only the overlapping space of Chu Xiu could allow the disciples of the Kunlun devil cult to freely travel between the two worlds. Xiangwu spread his hands and said, "Then let's go find Shenfeiying of the giant spirit gang and Bai Wuji of the floating snow city of the extreme north. They are all vassals of the Kunlun devil cult and are no different from true disciples." Xiangli thought about it and said, "All right then, I'll leave this matter to you." "Me?" Xiangwu was taken aback. He was the one who came up with the idea. How did he become the errand boy? Xiangli said matter-of-factly, "You were the one who came up with the idea, so of course, you should be the one to do it. Besides, this is such a big matter, the Northern Yen court should send someone capable to handle it." Xiangwu felt a little stifled. If he had known earlier, he wouldn't have said so much. However, since His Majesty had given the order, he had no choice but to go to Shenfeiying and Bai Wuji to talk about it. These two sects had been developing in the Northern Yen region for a long time, so they were quite familiar with Xiangwu. Hearing Xiangwu's words, the two looked at each other, and after a brief discussion through voice transmission, they decided to go with Xiangwu. Both of them were now vassal sects of the Kunlun devil cult. Of course, in the eyes of other Northern Yen martial artists, they were the number one lackeys. But it didn't matter whether they were lackeys or not. In any case, they were only loyal to the Kunlun devil cult. If Vajra sect Songwan had gone to provoke the Northern Yen court alone, they wouldn't have bothered to deal with him. But Songwan's first move to side with the Daoist prime sovereigns had already made them a little unhappy. Now, Songwan was acting so domineering. Had he really forgotten who was in charge of the Northern Yen region? Therefore, they were not only going to help the Northern Yen court, but also to use the identity of the Kunlun devil cult to teach Songwan a lesson. In a place more than 15 kilometers away from the capital city of Yanjing, there was a large construction going on in this place to establish a sect. This was the place where Xiang Long was going to build his temporary imperial residence. Although Xiangli wasn't a fatuous ruler, he wasn't the diligent type. He still had to enjoy himself. In the end, the temporary imperial residence was just about to be built when the place was taken away. One could imagine how sullen Xiangli was. At this time, Songwan was personally supervising the construction at the construction site. He was personally supervising the construction as the Vajra sect's master and an ethereal enlightenment realm expert. One could imagine how much effort he put into the construction of the Crimson Afterglow Divine sect. Songwan was a tall and burly middle-aged martial artist. He should have had a very fierce appearance, but he always wore a smile on his face and gave off a very kind feeling. Speaking of which, Songwan's rise was related to Chu Xiu. Previously, Songwan was just an ordinary unaffiliated martial artist in the Northern Yen. His strength wasn't strong and could only be said to be so. He had some reputation, but he couldn't be considered a big shot. But later, when Chu Xiu destroyed the Great Light Temple, Songwan and some other nosy martial artists went to the ruins of the Great Light Temple to investigate. It should have been a ruin, but Songwan accidentally found the Vajra institution's Furious Eyes Vajra Heart Sutra and some elixirs. This cultivation method was unexpectedly compatible with Songwan. He, who had never cultivated a Buddhist cultivation method, relied on the Furious Eyes Vajra Heart Sutra and the elixirs to improve his cultivation by leaps and bounds. He reached the true fire spirit refinement realm and established the Vajra sect, becoming one of the 8 sections. Later, when Chu Xiu attacked the Gate of Heaven, Songwan was also one of the participants in the Northern Yen. He broke the Gate of Heaven and Earth at the first opportunity and felt the wave of spiritual energy. Finally, not long ago, he stepped into the ethereal enlightenment realm. In this life, Songwan was most proud not of his strength, but his foresight. Over the years, he had experienced all kinds of things in Jianghu, big and small. But every time, he was able to seize the right opportunity to benefit himself and improve his strength by leaps and bounds. This time, the Daoist martial artists descended to the lower world. This was an opportunity given to Song Wan by the heavens. That was the legendary martial Immortal. Other than the Kunlun demon cult, only Yi Shaonan and the other three had reached this realm in the lower realm. Therefore, he chose to rely on them at the first moment, and put in all his effort to help them plan the establishment of a sect. Finally, they relented and accepted him as their disciple. That Gu Zun also had a disciple before, but since he had decided to establish a sect in the lower world, it was impossible for him to have only one disciple. Although Song Wan was a little old, at least he had strength and was obedient. This was not easy for a Gu Zun who was establishing a sect for the first time. At this moment, a disciple suddenly came to report, "Sect Master, Bai Wuji of the northern fluttering snow city and Shen Feiying of the giant spirit gang have arrived." The smile on Song Wan's face suddenly turned into a sneer. He knew what they were here for. They must have been invited by the Northern Yen court. Previously, Song Wan didn't have much of an opinion about the Kunlun demon sect. Even though he cultivated in the Buddhist sect's cultivation technique, he still yearned for the Kunlun demon sect. He hoped to be like Shen Feiying and Bai Wuji, becoming a vassal sect of the Kunlun demon sect. But what happened in the end? He rushed to recommend himself to Mei Qinglian, who was in charge of the northern Yen land. It was because he was impressed by Mei Qinglian's beauty that he took a few more glances at her. Because he wanted to show off his Vajra sect strength, he belittled the fluttering snow city and the giant spirit gang. That B*TCH chased him out. Ever since then, Song Wan had always harbored a trace of resentment towards the Kunlun demon sect. However, Song Wan was a man of great forbearance. Even when Mei Qinglian came to the northern Yen land again and called on the northern Yen martial artists to attack the Divine Gate, he did not do anything. He knew that no one in the pugilistic world could stop the Kunlun devil cult at that time. But now, things were different. The Kunlun devil cult was no longer the only sect in the world of Daoist martial artists. Song Wan was not among those who went to the Divine Gate to wait for the arrival of the martial artists from the upper world. He was not qualified to do so. But he did buy some information about martial immortals and Gu Zun from Wind-Sweeping Tower. He learned about Gu Zun's position in the Daoist world and that there were 9 levels of martial immortals. The Reverend Qi Xia, whom he was close to, was a martial immortal at the 5th level. As for Chu Xiu, he heard that he was a newly ascended martial immortal and should be between the 2nd and 3rd level. There was not much information about Chu Xiu in the Daoist world. Since Chu Xiu did not say anything, the Daoist martial artists did not bother to say anything. Only those who went to the Divine Gate had some guesses. Judging from the attitude of the Daoist martial artists, it seemed that Chu Xiu had a high position in the Daoist world. Of course, Song Wan did not know this. From what he knew, a 5th level was definitely stronger than a 2nd or 3rd level. Therefore, he, who had always been cautious, did so even though he knew that his action would offend the Northern Yen court and even the Kunlun devil cult. Since he had found someone to rely on, he must cling to him. He could not afford to be half-hearted. With that thought, Song Wan said calmly, "Go, invite him in." Shen Feiying and Bai Wuji walked in side by side. When Shen Feiying saw Song Wan, he said loudly, "Fatty Song, you're really something. You even dare to touch the Northern Yen court's land. What, do you want to be the emperor of this Northern Yen land?" Shen Feiying's talent was limited. Under the wave of primordial qi, he had barely reached the true fire spirit refinement realm. But facing Song Wan, who was stronger than him, Shen Feiying had nothing to fear. This fatty had flattered him many times before, and his attitude was very humble. A smile appeared on Song Wan's face. However, it was not the flattering smile that Bai Wuji was familiar with. Instead, it was a cold smile. He suddenly slapped Shen Feiying's face. A powerful glowing aura smashed down, and Shen Feiying was sent flying with blood spurting out of his mouth. Bai Wuji did not even have time to react. Is Fatty Song someone you can call? Is that something you have the right to do? Ridiculous. Bai Wuji helped Shen Feiying up, pointed at Song Wan and shouted, Song Wan. What is the meaning of this? Song Wan said calmly, I'm just teaching this disrespectful guy a lesson. How can a true fire spirit refinement realm warrior be so confident? Bai Wuji and Shen Feiying had a lot of things to say to Song Wan, but now it seemed that they were useless. From the other party's attitude, they could see what he meant. Bai Wuji narrowed his eyes and said coldly, Song Wan, do you really want to be an enemy of the Kunlun devil cult? Song Wan snorted coldly, I didn't. Don't slander me. I was just teaching Shen Feiying how to respect his superiors. If I take someone like him out, I'm afraid that even the cult master Chu would look down on him. Bai Wuji said coldly, good. Song Wan, you have guts. After saying that, Bai Wuji directly dragged the seriously injured Shen Feiying and left. Song Wan's subordinate said with some worry, Sect Master, that Shen Feiying is the #1 lackey of the Kunlun devil cult after all. You hit a dog under Chu Xiu, will you be okay? Song Wan sneered and pointed above his head, what are you afraid of? There are people above me now. Chapter 1378. Inside the Kunlun devil cult's southern temple. Shen Feiying's face was pale, but he was crying miserably. Sirs, you must uphold justice for me. I haven't even said a word, and that Song Wan slapped me. How arrogant is he? How arrogant. I know they all say that I'm a dog under Cult Master Chu, but what's wrong with being a dog? I'm a lackey under Cult Master Chu, and I've never been wronged like this. You have to look at the master before you beat a dog. Song Wan slapped me, which means he didn't give Cult Master Chu any face. He's slapping the Saint Cult's face. Most of the Kunlun devil cult's forces were now in the southern temple. Wei Shuya, Mei Qinglian, and the others looked at Shen Feiying, who was crying out his grievances and felt a headache coming on. Shen Feiying was loyal, but he was becoming more and more shameless. They dared to guarantee that Shen Feiying's words were definitely exaggerated, and he was exaggerating the matter. Mei Qinglian glanced at Bai Wuji and said, Bai Wuji, tell me what's going on. Bai Wuji was a warrior on the Longhu list in the same era as Chu Xiu. At first, they were enemies, but later they became his subordinates. After so many years, Bai Wuji had lost a lot of his youthful arrogance and had become much calmer. Hearing this, Bai Wuji said in a deep voice, although Master Shen exaggerated a little, things are really similar to what he said. Song Wan's attitude is extremely tough. It's clear that he doesn't take us seriously. Maybe in his opinion, he can ignore the Kunlun devil cult if he has the support of Venerable Qixia. Mei Qinglian turned to Wei Shuya and asked, Elder Wei, what's the background of Venerable Qixia? Wei Shuya was experienced and prudent. Since Chu Xiu and Meng Xinghe became enemies, Wei Shuya had specially asked Sikong Tan for information on Gu Zun. Meng Xinghe was now the leader of Gu Zun's faction. Although he did not show any intention of using this identity to suppress Chu Xiu, he still had to be on guard. Wei Shuya shook his head. He doesn't have much of a background, just an ordinary prime sovereign. He had spent his entire life cultivating in peace, never stirring up any disputes among the Daoist people. He was the type of prime sovereign who cultivated arduously. However, it seemed that he had been training hard for a long time, so he was unwilling to continue. He was already tempted when Meng Xinghe announced that Gu Zun could establish a sect in the lower realm at will. Mei Qinglian frowned and said, this kind of talent is the most troublesome. Now that Cult Master is not here, what can we do? Mobilize all of them to fight against the enemy? We can defeat them, but I'm afraid that something will happen to the southern barbarians. The Kunlun devil cult wasn't weak at all. Wei Shuya, Fang Baidu, Su Tianya, and Chen Qingdi were 4 martial immortals. Any 2 of them could deal with the enemy. However, Mei Qinglian was worried about the southern barbarians and the fact that there was more than one prime sovereign in the northern Yan. She was afraid that they would secretly collude with each other, which would be troublesome. When Shen Feiying saw that Mei Qinglian and the others were actually hesitating, he was also a little unwilling. He gritted his teeth and said, "Saintess, the truth is that Song Wan's hostility towards our holy church is also because of you. That bastard has always slandered you in private." Mei Qinglian frowned. "Me? I don't think I've seen him more than a few times." Shen Feiying said, "When Song Wan's Vajra sect was just rising, he wanted to join our holy cult. At that time, you were in charge of the northern Yan, Saintess. In the end, you drove him out, so he has always held a grudge and slandered you in private. His intentions should be put to death." Shen Feiying added, "We found out about this after the incident. If you don't believe me, you can ask Bai Wuji." Bai Wuji nodded, proving that Shen Feiying was right. Mei Qinglian thought for a moment and said, "That's true. This person looked at me in an improper way, which made me feel disgusted. He has not joined our holy cult yet, but he has already started to stir up trouble. He is not a stable character. Our holy cult is not afraid of greedy people or ambitious people. However, it would be troublesome to keep this kind of person who was an expert at stirring up internal strife. So, I directly chased him out. By the way, you said he slandered me. What did he slander about me?" Shen Feiying carefully looked at Mei Qinglian and said, "He said that you are already so old, why are you pretending to be a saintess? You are more like a saintess. He also said that you use your beauty to win the favor of the cult master Chu. Otherwise, how can a woman be qualified to be one of the leaders of the Kunlun devil cult? He also said that since ancient times, women cannot achieve anything, only ruin things. For the Kunlun devil cult to raise a woman to such a position, it must be." Shen Feiying did not dare to continue. Because Mei Qinglian's pretty face was extremely gloomy. The karmic fire of the red lotus circled around her like a volcano that was about to erupt. "That bastard! I will cut him into 1,000 pieces. I will use the karmic fire to train my heart while cutting him into 1,000 pieces." Mei Qinglian, who was calmly analyzing the pros and cons of her attack, was now completely enraged. She even wanted to kill her way to the northern Yan. Lu Jianghu, who was standing at the side, curled his lips slightly. He thought to himself that Song Wan was right. Women were really prone to ruin things. Once it involved him, they would immediately lose their cool. Of course, the Red Lotus Demon Sovereign was an exception. He would remain calm even if Mount Tai collapsed in front of him. The woman he loved was indeed different. At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded, "Who provoked you? Who are you going to cut into 1,000 pieces?" Seeing Chu Xiu walk in from outside, everyone's eyes immediately revealed a look of surprise and surprise. Ning Xuanji had taken Chu Xiu away in a mysterious manner. No one knew what he was up to. Of course, no one suspected that he was trying to harm Chu Xiu. It was not because they trusted Ning Xuanji's character, but because at Ning Xuanji's level, if he really wanted to kill Chu Xiu, it would basically be a matter of a slap. There was no need to go through so much trouble. Originally, they thought that Chu Xiu would be gone for a long time. They did not expect that Chu Xiu would return in less than 2 months. Chu Xiu asked, "What happened? Did something happen in the pugilistic world?" At this moment, Shen Feiying saw that Chu Xiu had arrived. He immediately told Chu Xiu everything that had happened with an aggrieved expression. Of course, in front of Chu Xiu, Shen Feiying didn't dare to add fuel to the fire. He recounted everything that had happened from beginning to end. After hearing it, Chu Xiu only responded with an "oh" to indicate that he understood. Mei Qinglian said unhappily, "He doesn't even care about our saint sect. Don't you have anything to say?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Don't be angry. Isn't this very normal? When has our saint sect ever been loved by everyone? This kind of thing is actually very normal. I had already thought of it when I was in the upper realm. If the prime sovereigns want to establish sects in the lower realm, where will the disciples come from? Where will the people come from? Of course they will recruit a group of people from the lower realm. As for these people in the lower realm, not to mention other places, even in the northern Yen kingdom, there are many people who hold grudges against our holy church. Or perhaps some who are ambitious, but our saint's sect cannot satisfy their ambitions. Naturally, they will look for another way out. Prime sovereigns from Exalted Major are a good way out for them, so isn't it normal for Vajragate's Songwon to perform so well? So what do you plan to do now? Although the saint sect's main forces are not in the northern Yen land, the northern Yen royal family has fully submitted to our saint sect. Moreover, the northern Yen land has been under our control for the longest time. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes. What do you plan to do? Of course I have to let the Daoist know that they have to abide by the rules of the lower realm. At the same time, we have to let those people in the lower realm know that in the lower realm, our holy sect dominates the pugilistic world. In the Daoist heaven, our holy sect also dominates the eastern domain. Shen Feiying's eyes lit up at this. He was willing to become a lackey of the Kunlun devil cult and be reviled by the northern Yen pugilistic world. What was he after? All he wanted was a master who could help him when he was wronged. Even if Shen Feiying was a lackey, he could only be a lackey for the strong. In one of the most luxurious courtyards of the northern Yen guardian sect. This used to be Songwon's personal residence, but he had now given it to Venerable Crimson Dawn. At this moment, Song Wanzheng had his head lowered as he reported to Reverend Qi Xia about the establishment of the sect. Don't worry, Master. The sect will be completed in 3 months. Your disciple will prepare a grand founding ceremony for you and make the Crimson Dawn divine sect famous in the pugilistic world. Venerable Crimson Dawn wore a crimson Daoist robe with a fiery cloud crown on his head. His face was square and elegant, and he had a profound temperament. But in fact, he was not considered outstanding among the prime sovereigns of the Daoist world. His lineage had become a prime sovereign halfway through. The Crimson Dawn divine sect had been in the Daoist world for a long time, but it had taken the elite route and trained very few disciples, no more than 10 in each generation. But as the number of disciples increased, the Crimson Dawn divine sect could no longer take the elite route. It could only be passed down to a single disciple, which was why it had hidden itself in the mountains and became a prime sovereign. This time, Reverend Crimson Afterglow was the most fervent. He wanted to establish a sect in the lower realms, rebuild the Crimson Afterglow divine sect, and restore the glory of his ancestors. In fact, Venerable Crimson Dawn looked down on Songwon. The Daoist prime sovereigns had always been aloof and virtuous, and Venerable Crimson Dawn loathed people who were full of worldly air. But Venerable Crimson Dawn was the first person to seek refuge in the lower realm, and he was sensible, obedient, and strong, which saved him a lot of trouble in establishing a new sect. So even if Venerable Crimson Dawn didn't like him, he still accepted him as a disciple. At this time, a disciple suddenly came to report that the leader of the Kunlun devil cult, Chu Xiu, had personally come to visit. Songwon was not surprised to hear that the Kunlun devil cult had come. If the other party did not respond, it would not be the Kunlun devil cult. So he immediately said to Venerable Crimson Dawn, Master, the Kunlun devil cult must be unhappy with us for invading the northern Yen imperial palace to establish a sect. They have always been domineering, but with Master here this time, they must have kicked an iron plate and can only return in defeat. Songwon was still flattering Venerable Crimson Dawn, but he did not notice the slight change in Venerable Crimson Dawn's expression. Chapter 1379. Venerable Crimson Dawn did not know that Songwon's actions were related to the Kunlun devil cult. He was a primeval sovereign of the exalted heaven. He had only been in the lower realm for 2 months, and most of the matters were handled by Songwon. How could he possibly know that the current emperor of northern Yen, Xiangli, was single-handedly raised to the throne by Chu Xiu? The giant spirit gang and Snowdrift City of the extreme north were all vassals of the Kunlun demon cult. But intuition told Venerable Crimson Dawn that the other party did not come with good intentions. Outside the Vajra Gate, Chu Xiu studied the exterior of the Vajra Gate. It was not a grand building, but it was a rather large one. On the way here, Chu Xiu had heard of Song Wan's actions. He was a character, but not a big one. The other party had seized the two opportunities of the Great Light Temple being destroyed and the attack on the Heavenly Gate to leap up and become one of the 8 sections. If Zai had developed steadily for a period of time, he might have been able to advance further in this era of great battles. Unfortunately, everything was over now. Song Wan's hostility towards the Kunlun devil cult was not wrong. Chu Xiu was not so narcissistic as to think that all sects should fear and respect him. Song Wan's fatal flaw was that he was too anxious. It didn't matter how much he viewed the Kunlun demon sect in the dark. But he didn't even understand the situation in the Great Haven Law Heavens and had already started to seek refuge with Reverend Qi Xia. Not only that, he even provoked the Kunlun demon sect. He had made the wrong move and there was no chance for him to turn back. Venerable Crimson Dawn hurried out and cupped his hands at Chu Xiu. He laughed and said, "Cult Master Chu has arrived. Please forgive me for not going out to meet you. I did not have the time to chat with Cult Master Chu during the Grand Assembly of Ancient Lords. Since we have time today, we can talk about martial arts and get to know each other better." Chu Xiu said lightly, "I'm a little surprised that Venerable Qi Xia is so kind. I thought Venerable Qi Xia would just kick me out." Looking at Chu Xiu's attitude and his ambiguous words, Venerable Qi Xia was taken aback. He then burst out laughing, "What are you talking about, Cult Master Chu? Who didn't know the prestige of the Lord of the Eastern Domain? Cult Master Chu, you've come to my place as a guest, and I can't wait to welcome you, so how could I possibly drive you out?" Song Wan, who was following behind Reverend Qi Xia, could already feel that something was amiss. Beads of cold sweat rolled down his forehead. Venerable Qi Xia's attitude was very cold, not only to Song Wan, but also to the other primordial sovereigns who came down with him. Song Wan had seen this with his own eyes. But today, when he saw Chu Xiu, Venerable Qi Xia's performance had him taken aback. Although he was not trying to curry favor, he was carefully flattering Chu Xiu. It was obvious that he was putting Chu Xiu in a higher position than himself. In fact, Song Wan was very good at reading people. Venerable Qi Xia was indeed cautious. He had only met Chu Xiu during the Grand Assembly of Ancient Lords, but had not had any dealings with him. But then, the rumors about Chu Xiu involuntarily drifted into his ears. He killed Yi Weikong of Cold River City, single-handedly turned the tables and defeated the Southern Domain. In the end, he even counterattacked the Southern Domain, forcing the Sword Sect under the heavens. If it was not for the 3 Pristines Temple who came to stop him, the Sword Sect under the heavens would no longer exist in the Daoist. What shocked Venerable Qi Xia the most was the exposure of Chu Xiu's identity in the lower realm. This person had the identity of a lower realm and a lower realm, deceiving all the Daoist people. Even the patriarch of the Sanskrit sect was threatened by the other party. Although Venerable Qi Xia did not know much about what happened 500 years ago, and he did not know why the sect leader of Sanskrit was so afraid, he knew one thing: Chu Xiu had a terrifying trump card, so powerful that they could not afford to offend him. That was why Venerable Qi Xia was so cautious when he saw Chu Xiu. Staring at Venerable Qi Xia, Chu Xiu smiled faintly, "You don't dare to kick me out?" However, the Venerable One had already chased my men out and even injured my subordinate, Shen Feiying. Venerable Qi Xia was stunned. When did this happen? Why didn't I know? Could there be some kind of misunderstanding here? Chu Xiu said, "You will have to ask your subordinate, sect leader Song Wan." The Northern Yen court was raised by the Kunlun devil cult, but your subordinate stole the palace of the Northern Yen court to build his own sect. My men had only gone to ask about it, but before they could even finish a single sentence, they were sent flying back with a slap to the face. Venerable Qi Xia's lineage, how mighty, how domineering. I didn't say anything when the Daoist venerables came down to the Northern Yen. Although the Northern Yen is under the Kunlun devil cult's control, the Kunlun devil cult is not intolerant. But from the looks of it, you're planning to let this scarlet afterglow divine sect of yours, which has yet to be established, dominate the Northern Yen kingdom, and let my Kunlun demon sect make space for you? As soon as Chu Xiu finished speaking, Venerable Qixia turned to Song Wan, a cold glint in his eyes. Bastard! Are you the one who did all this? Song Wan wiped away the cold sweat on his forehead. Master, listen to me. As soon as the words left his mouth, Venerable Qi Xia slapped him across the face, sending him flying. He cursed, Bastard! Why didn't you tell me? Why did you take matters into your own hands? If not for Cult Master Chu's visit, I wouldn't have known that you did such a despicable thing. Venerable Qixia turned to Chu Xiu and bowed apologetically. It is my fault for not being strict with my subordinates. Please forgive me, Cult Master Chu. That's it? Chu Xiu asked. Venerable Qixia was taken aback, then his face darkened. I've already taught my subordinate a lesson and apologized. What more does Cult Master Chu want? Do you want me to kowtow and hold a banquet to apologize? Chu Xiu replied coldly, I can't bring myself to humiliate a prime sovereign like this. But I've given you face, Venerable Qixia, so you must give me face as well. Shen Feiying is one of my men, one of the earliest vassal sects to submit to the Kunlun devil cult. Be it the Daoist or the lower realm, anyone who touches my men should be forgiven with a slap. Is that even possible? Hand over Song Wan and the lands of the Northern Yen royalty. Venerable Qixia, if you wish to establish a sect in Northern Yen, I will not stop you. In fact, I will even cooperate. Impossible. Venerable Qixia refused without hesitation. Perhaps prime sovereigns like them were not suited for sects, but that did not mean they were idiots. Song Wan was now his disciple and the first person to submit to him since he arrived in the lower realm. Handing him over to Chu Xiu would be a slap to his face. And a slap to the point of death. Chu Xiu raised an eyebrow. Venerable Qixia, are you really not going to hand him over? As soon as Chu Xiu's voice trailed off, a faint demonic aura emanated from behind him, stirring the power of laws in the air and shaking Venerable Qixia's heart. Only then did he realize that Chu Xiu was already a 5th-layer martial immortal, the same level as him. But everyone knew that Chu Xiu's combat prowess had nothing to do with his cultivation level. When he was at the 3rd layer, he was already able to kill opponents who were 2 or 3 layers above him. Now that he was at the 5th layer, how much more powerful would he be? Venerable Qixia gritted his teeth. I will return the lands of the Northern Yen royalty. When the time comes, I will find another place to establish my sect. Chu Xiu took a step forward. Venerable Qixia followed. Cult Master Chu, how do you intend to punish Song Wan? Even if you want to cripple him, I can punish him myself. But he must be here with me. Just then, a few figures stepped out from behind Chu Xiu. Their auras were equally powerful. Chenqing Di, Wei Shuya, Su Tianya, and Fang Baidu. For martial immortals. Just Chu Xiu alone was enough to put him under great pressure, let alone the 4 behind him. Venerable Qixia bellowed, Chu Xiu. What do you want? Don't forget, we are both from the same bloodline as the Gu Zun. Are you not going to give me face? Chu Xiu sneered. Gu Zun? Do you still think I'm some Gu Zun? I'm lying. Also, one had to fight for their reputation, not be given to them by others. Venerable Qixia, when you wanted to establish your sect in the Northern Yen, did you ever think of giving me face? You didn't even send someone to greet me. Why should I give you face now? Are you not going to abide by the rules of the Guzun conference? Venerable Xianxia asked. Chu Xiu replied coolly, I'm not a Guzun anymore. Why should I abide by the rules of the Guzun conference? He took a step forward. The demonic aura behind Chu Xiu had already formed a blurry, sinister figure. But it was shrouded in chaos, making it impossible to see the figure clearly. Venerable Xianxia, are you going to hand this man over or not? Cold sweat began to form on Venerable Xia's forehead. Given Chu Xiu's reputation in the Daoist world, he had no doubt that Chu Xiu would really take action or was just bluffing. The number of martial immortals that died at Chu Xiu's hands was not just one or two. Chu Xiu, you've participated in the Guzun conference. You should know that Headmaster Meng, before Venerable Xianxia could finish his sentence, Chu Xiu interrupted him and sneered, Meng Xinghe? If he had the chance, he would kill me immediately. But I'm still alive and kicking. Are you going to use him to pressure me? Venerable Xianxia bellowed when he saw Chu Xiu's hand on the hilt of the saber hanging from his waist. His stellar energy erupted. Just when Song Wan thought his master was going to fight Chu Xiu for his sake, Venerable Xianxia bellowed, Fine, I'll hand him over then. Chu Xiu, I'll remember today's humiliation. We'll settle this score in the future. With that, Venerable Xianxia's figure turned into a beam of scarlet light and disappeared into the horizon. Song Wan's expression changed from one of hope to one of despair. He had never imagined that his newly acknowledged master would abandon him so decisively without even making a move. Song Wan's eyes were filled with fear and indignation as he stared at Chu Xiu. He fell to his knees and begged for mercy. Cult Master Chu, please spare my life. I was blinded by greed and wanted to please Venerable Xianxia. That old man has offended the holy sect. Please spare my life, Cult Master Chu. The Vajra sect is willing to join the Kunlun Devil cult and serve the Kunlun Devil cult. Chapter 1380. For a martial artist of Song Wan's level, kneeling and begging for mercy was not only a shameful thing, but also a complete loss of dignity. But compared to fear, Song Wan's heart was now filled with unwillingness. He had racked his brains and built the Vajra sect from scratch, but he was unwilling to let it all go to waste. Shen Feiying leaned over and sneered, You think a piece of trash like you is worthy of being Cult Master Chu's lackey? Are you even worthy? The Kunlun Devil cult only had one lackey, the Titan Spirit Gang was enough, they needed a second one. Chu Xiu looked at Song Wan and shook his head, You're a smart man, but too smart for your own good. Do you still think I don't know what you're thinking? It doesn't matter if you're hostile to the Kunlun Devil cult or if you're trying to please Venerable Xianxia. What's important is that those who offend the sacred sect must pay the price. Otherwise, others will think that the sacred sect is easy to bully. With that, Chu Xiu turned to Mei Qinglian and said, This guy slandered you? I'll leave him to you. Do whatever you want, but don't be too cruel. After all, he's already miserable enough. Mei Qinglian sneered, Don't worry, we women are soft-hearted. We can't be too cruel. But in the next moment, the karmic fire of the red lotus bloomed in Song Wan's body, causing him to scream in agony. Chu Xiu shook his head gently and said to Shen Feiying, Help me send out an invitation to all prime venerables and Daoist martial artists in Northern Yen land to meet in the Northern Yen Palace in 10 days for a meeting. The incident with Venerable Xianxia was also a catalyst for Chu Xiu to deal with the Daoist prime venerables in a fair and just manner. In the past, the Kunlun Devil cult had not yet dominated the Jianghu in the lower realm. What could really be regarded as Chu Xiu's sphere of influence, except for the southern barbarian land, was the northern Yen. Therefore, Chu Xiu couldn't care less about how the other Daoist sects were doing, but at least in the northern Yen region, he was the one making the decisions. While Chu Xiu was about to convene the northern Yen land's primogenitors for a meeting, Venerable Crimson Dawn had gone to eastern Qi to find Fang Daochen of the Star River Martial Court. Although Meng Xinghe was not in the Galaxy Martial Academy, Fang Daochen was Meng Xinghe's trusted aide and was helping him manage the Galaxy Martial Academy for the time being. Venerable Crimson Dawn could no longer stay in the northern Yen region, nor did he have the face to do so. Forcing him to hand over his disciple in front of everyone, this was a huge loss of face for him. However, Venerable Crimson Dawn could not take this lying down. Although he was the one who had backed down, he was still a primogenitor and a fifth heaven martial immortal expert. The more he thought about it, the angrier he became. There was no end to this. The location of the Star River Martial Court was very strange. It was located on the Lini River of the Eastern Qi. It was directly suspended in the air and built on the surface of the water with a formation. Meng Xinghe's Galaxy Unfettered Cultivator was very good at things like formations. He had even prepared all kinds of formation plates before he came to the lower realm for the establishment of a sect in the lower realm. That was why the Star River Martial Court was established so quickly in the lower realm. Even though Meng Xinghe was not here, it only took 2 months for the Star River Martial Court to rise from the ground. The Star River Martial Court did not have any special purpose in doing so. Floating above the river would not increase the martial court's defensive power. The only advantage was that it looked very majestic and incomparably strange. But that was enough. This was the effect that the Star River Martial Court wanted. Martial artists from the lower realm who did not know the truth would be able to feel the power of the Star River Martial Court just by looking at it and have the confidence to join. After Venerable Crimson Dawn arrived, Fang Daochen, who was temporarily in charge of the Star River Martial Court, immediately came out to greet him. It was not because Venerable Crimson Dawn was influential, but because Fang Daochen wanted to rope in these primogenitors to join the Star River Martial Court. I heard that Venerable Crimson Dawn went to the Northern Yen to establish a sect. What brings you to my Star River Martial Court today? Have you thought it through and decided to join my Star River Martial Court? Fang Daochen was only joking, but Venerable Crimson Dawn said angrily, if the Star River Martial Court can help me, why can't I join it? Fang Daochen was surprised. Venerable Crimson Dawn, what did you suffer? But someone in the lower realm dares to attack you? Primogenitors at the fifth heaven of martial immortal were strong enough and definitely stood at the peak. As long as Venerable Crimson Dawn did not provoke the experts of the top sects, no one would dare to provoke him. Moreover, according to Fang Daochen's understanding, Venerable Crimson Dawn was not the kind of person who liked to cause trouble. On the contrary, he was very peaceful and would not take the initiative to provoke those from the top sections. It's Chu Xiu of the Kunlun Devil Cult. Venerable Crimson Dawn gritted his teeth and told Fang Daochen everything that happened. My disciple made a mistake and I was in the wrong. I don't care if he wants to kill me or cut me up, as long as I do it myself. In the end, he forced me to hand him over and humiliated me. How can I take this lying down? And he even ignored the rules of the primogenitors. He simply does not respect the primogenitors. Fang Daochen could not help but shake his head after listening to Venerable Crimson Dawn. If it was Chu Xiu who did this, it would be normal. Ever since Chu Xiu's identity was exposed, he was no longer a primogenitor. What was the use of using the primogenitors to suppress him? Fang Daochen thought for a moment and said, how about this? The Dean is not here for the time being. Why don't you wait in the Starry River Martial Academy until the Dean returns? Venerable Crimson Dawn shook his head. It'll be over when that happens. Fang Daozhang, the Dean is not here, but you are. Can't you do something to quell Chu Xiu's arrogance? Before I left the Northern Yen land, I heard that Chu Xiu summoned all the primogenitors and Daoist cultivators in the Northern Yen for a meeting. I believe he wants to use my matter as a prelude to threaten the other primogenitors and Daoist cultivators to follow the rules of the Kunlun Devil cult in the Northern Yen land. This Chu Xiu was so arrogant and overbearing in his actions. When the time came, he would definitely incur the wrath of the masses. At this moment, if Daoist Fang were to make a move, with the Starry River Martial Institution and Dean Meng's reputation, there would definitely be many who would respond. Do you want to give up such a good opportunity to increase the prestige of the Starry River Martial Academy and Dean Meng? Although Fang Daochen knew that Venerable Crimson Dawn was only provoking him to cause trouble for Chu Xiu, this matter was indeed beneficial to the Starry River Martial Academy. Fang Daochen pondered for a moment and said, "Is what you said true?" Venerable Crimson Dawn hurriedly said, "How would I dare lie to you about this matter, Dao Zhang?" Fang Daochen pondered for a moment and said, "Very well, I will go with you to the northern Yen land." Before Meng Xinghe left, he had instructed Fang Daochen that the Starry River Martial Academy should focus on stability before he returned. If they could recruit disciples, teach them, and if they couldn't, then leave it to fate. But if he made good use of this opportunity, he could gain the favor of several primogenitors. It would be worth it if one or two of them joined the Starry River Martial Academy. In the Northern Yen Imperial Palace, the Grand Ceremony Hall was filled with seats, waiting for the arrival of the Northern Yen Prime Sovereigns and Daoist experts from the lower realm. Xiangli sat on the main seat, but he was currently twisting his body as if he had lice on his body. After being an emperor for so many years, Xiang Long had developed the bearing of an emperor. His every move was well behaved, but now he behaved like an ADHD child and didn't look like an emperor at all. Sitting below Xiangli, Chu Xiu asked, "Are you nervous, Your Majesty?" Xiangli smiled wryly. "Of course I'm nervous. Cult Master Chu, why did you call me here? You even asked me to sit on the main seat. Why don't you take this seat? You will be in charge of everything in the northern Yen Jianghu." Chu Xiu shook his head. "You are mistaken, Your Majesty. No matter who is in charge of the northern Yen Jianghu, this is the northern Yen Jianghu, the northern Yen of the imperial court. It is time for the Jianghu's court to separate. The imperial court manages the world's court, and the Jianghu people deal with disputes. This is the right way. What happened last time in the northern Yen Jianghu Dawn will not happen a second time." As the two conversed, someone outside announced that the prime sovereigns and Daoist sects had arrived. In the northern Yen Jianghu, there were 3 prime sovereigns and a dozen sections. These sects were from the southern and northern regions. They weren't weak, but they weren't strong either. Those present were surprised to see Chu Xiu sitting in the lower seat. Who the hell was that sitting on the main seat? Xiangli had some cultivation, but it was nothing in their eyes. He was no different from an ant that could be squashed to death at any time. What was Chu Xiu trying to do by letting someone like that sit in the main seat? Chu Xiu looked at the crowd and pointed at Xiangli. "Everyone, this is the Emperor of the Northern Yen Imperial Court, His Majesty Xiangli." The prime sovereigns and sect masters only nodded in confusion, not showing any intention of bowing. The Daoist did not have an imperial court. 10,000 years ago, when martial Dao was flourishing, there was no imperial court or temple. The top sects were already in control of everything. After coming to the lower realm, they learned of the existence of the Northern Yen Imperial Court, but they didn't pay much attention to it. In their view, the so-called Imperial Court was also a large sect, but it was the kind that had a wider range of control, even managing the lives of the common people. Rapping on the table, Chu Xiu said in a deep voice, "I have gathered all of you here today for one reason, to explain the rules of the Northern Yen Imperial Court. The Daoist were the Daoist, and the lower realm was the lower realm. The rules naturally had to change when the place changed. If you want to establish a sect in the lower realm, you may do so, but you must report the location and number of people to the Northern Yen Imperial Court and the Kunlun Devil Cult at the same time. The lower realm is different from the Daoist Imperial Court. There are many people here, and the Imperial Court is in charge of the people, while the Jianghu people are in charge of the Jianghu. Everyone has their own duties. This is the rule of the Northern Yen Imperial Court." Chapter 1381. The Northern Yen rules Chu Xiu mentioned, or rather Chu Xiu's own rules, immediately caused an uproar among the crowd. Everyone showed a trace of dissatisfaction. Chu Xiu's rules were even stricter than those of the Daoist sections. Even the top Daoist sects did not have as much control as Chu Xiu. A martial immortal immediately stepped forward and said in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, your Kunlun devil cult is strong, but we are not your vassal sections. Don't you think you've gone too far?" Chu Xiu said indifferently, "I've never wanted you to become my vassal sections. The vassal sects of the Kunlun devil cult will not only pay such a small price. I asked you to report your sect's address to distance yourself from each other so that two sects that are too close to each other will easily clash. I asked you to report your disciples so that if any arrogant disciple causes trouble, it will be easier to find the sect he belongs to. The Northern Yan is the territory that the Kunlun devil cult has been operating for so many years. You can come if you want, but you must abide by the rules of the Northern Yan and my, Chu Xiu's, rules. And I hate people who don't abide by the rules." Chu Xiu's words were almost equivalent to a threat. He was just short of pointing at their noses and telling them to scram if they didn't abide by the rules. Anger flashed in the eyes of the crowd. The leaders of the other sects naturally did not dare to challenge Chu Xiu, but the remaining three primeval sovereigns were all martial immortals. When had they ever been treated like this? At this moment, a voice suddenly sounded from the outside world. "Cult Master Chu is so awe-inspiring, so domineering. In the past, not even Lord Taixien dared to say that the Three Pristines Temple could set the rules of the northern region. Today, Cult Master Chu, you want to bring the entire Northern Yan under your command?" Fang Daochen and Venerable Qi Xia walked in from the outside. The Northern Yan's guards and formation did not seem to be of any use, as Chu Xiu had already ordered them to retreat. Against a martial immortal level expert, the Northern Yan's defensive formation was practically non-existent. The guards would only be throwing their lives away. "Fang Daochen, this is a Northern Yan matter. What are you doing here?" Chu Xiu's eyes were cold. Fang Daochen shook his head with a faint smile. "No, this isn't just about the Northern Yan, it's about the Gu Zun. Chu Xiu, you deceived the Daoist people with the name of Gu Zun. Now that you're strong enough, you can give up the name of Gu Zun's lineage?" "You've given up, but I can't. Dean Meng's absence doesn't mean that the Gu Zun's lineage has no leader and can be bullied by anyone." Fang Daochen's righteous words moved the three prime venerables present. They knew that Fang Daochen had taken the initiative to speak up for them because he wanted them to join the Galaxy Martial Academy. However, he was on their side after all. Although the Gu Zun's lineage shared a common name, it was only a very loose alliance. They were so loose that they would only meet each other during the Gu Zun Grand Assembly. When the Essence God Venerables were the leaders of the Gu Zun's lineage, they rarely interfered in the personal affairs of others. However, they also did not come forward to help like Fang Daochen did. Therefore, Fang Daochen's appearance had won them a good impression. Chu Xiu looked at Fang Daochen and sneered. "The Three Pristines Temple doesn't set the rules in the northern region because Lord Taixien doesn't need it. But now, I need it. Do you think the Galaxy Martial Academy has a lot of influence? Do you think the leader of the Gu Zun's lineage has a lot of influence? When Meng Xinghe came to the eastern region to kill me, he failed. Now you, Fang Daochen, have come to the Northern Yan as Meng Xinghe's confidant. Do you really think I won't dare to kill you?" Chu Xiu's body was full of killing intent as he shouted the last word. He did not give Fang Daochen a chance to speak at all. The formation-breaking tool in his hand was directly unsheathed and the ethereal slash fell. An invisible blade suddenly attacked Fang Daochen. Fang Daochen was shocked and pinched a seal with his hand. Wisps of Dao accumulation flowed out from his body and formed an 8 trigrams formation board around him. The ethereal slash's power was hidden in the void law. Very few warriors of the same level could detect the existence of the ethereal slash. However, Fang Daochen's power was delicate and delicate. He was good at fighting with a small force. The 8 trigrams flowed in the formation board. Fang Daochen used his inner force to evolve the formation and predicted the ethereal slash's position in advance. He gathered his power in an instant and blocked the ethereal slash before it could reach him. The next moment, however, Chu Xiu's figure seemed to have teleported. He almost crossed the space and appeared in front of Fang Daochen in the blink of an eye. He punched Fang Daochen out of the hall with absolute power. The three prime venerables and venerable Qi Xia stood up when they saw Chu Xiu attack. However, they were stared at by Chen Qingdi, Wei Shuya, Fang Baidu, and Su Tianya. Chen Qingdi sneered. "This has nothing to do with you. Stay where you are and wait for Cult Master Chu to get rid of that fly. Then, we'll talk about your business." With the exception of Venerable Qi Xia, no one else present had made up their minds to turn against Chu Xiu. They stayed where they were. Outside the palace, Fang Daochen was thrown out of the palace by Chu Xiu. His face was filled with shock. Fang Daochen was not weak. He was a seventh heaven martial immortal. That was why he felt that Chu Xiu's power was unbelievably strong. More importantly, when did Chu Xiu step into the fifth heaven? Before he could react, Chu Xiu waved his hand and cast out the 6 Saha wonder wheels. The 6 paths of reincarnation rotated continuously in the air and bombarded him with 6 different forces, eroding his power source. Fang Daochen waved the horsetail whisk in his hand, and a grayish Taoist connotation circulated. The power of the laws in the surroundings was woven into a large formation, and it resisted the 6 Saha samsara wheels, fusing the Tao of formations into the power of laws. How creative! Fang Daochen was one of the few martial artists that Chu Xiu had seen that was as creative as him. Most people's skills focused on the large and targeted the source of the great Tao. However, Fang Daochen's skills focused on the small and focused on the most subtle parts of the power. This led to Fang Daochen's control of power far surpassing other martial artists of the same level, even if his power was not strong. The formation was so intricate that it could not be used in a one-on-one battle. However, Fang Daochen's precise control of power allowed him to weave a large formation with the power of laws in such a subtle place. It was amazing. In the next moment, Fang Daochen formed a Daoist seal and a simple 8 trigrams formation rose under Chu Xiu's feet. The 8 trigrams formation was indeed the simplest formation. However, in Fang Daochen's hands, the 8 trigrams formation kept rotating and changing. Chu Xiu was not good at breaking formations, but he knew that the simplest and most direct way to break a formation was to break it with force. He used the law embodiment of heaven and earth. Chu Xiu's body instantly turned into a giant that was thousands of feet tall, and he directly broke the 8 trigrams formation. The punch landed with enough force to shatter mountains and break rivers. A storm of origin qi gathered in an instant. Fang Daochen's expression changed several times. He waved his hands and a water and fire formation appeared at the same time. The two merged and intertwined to form a large net, blocking Chu Xiu's punch. Chu Xiu. Do you really want to make an enemy of the Guzun's line? Chu Xiu laughed. Fang Daochen, this is where you're inferior to Meng Xinghe. Meng Xinghe would never play such tricks or spout such nonsense. Do you think that by bringing yourself into the Guzun's line, the Guzun's line will view me as an enemy and fight me to the death? How naive. Even Meng Xinghe doesn't have that kind of status, let alone you, Fang Daochen. I have 2 Guzun working for me now. Did the 4 Guzun in the house, including Supremacy Qi Xia, who had a grudge with me before, make a move? Would he dare to make a move? Your provocation is no different from spouting nonsense. In the next moment, the indestructible holy demon body was directly wrapped around the law embodiment of heaven and earth, causing Chu Xiu's strength to soar. Scorching Buddhist light and pitch-black demonic qi intertwined and converged. The punch landed like a huge black and red tornado. Even the power of laws was shattered under this extreme power. The formation in front of Fang Daochen was completely torn apart. He gritted his teeth and drew a small, door-like formation in front of him. In an instant, the light grew brighter. He stepped into it and disappeared in an instant. Fang Daochun's formation was related to space. It could directly break through space and transport people over short distances. Chu Xiu did not give chase. A seventh heaven martial artist was determined to escape, especially one like Fang Daochun, who had many tricks up his sleeves. Chu Xiu could not catch up to him. But that was not important. His main goal today was not to kill the people of the Star River Martial Arts School. When he returned to the hall, there were only 3 people there. Supremacy Qi Xia was nowhere to be seen. Chen Qingdi shrugged and said, "That guy ran away. He's a coward." He noticed Fang Daochun's departure before we even made a move. He ran pretty fast too. I guess he has given up on his plan to establish a sect. It did not matter that Supremacy Qi Xia had run away. Chu Xiu turned his gaze to the remaining 3 and said, "I don't object if you want to establish a sect in the northern Yen land, but I'll say it again. Wherever you are, you have to abide by the rules. The rules of the northern Yen land are set by me. Are you going to abide by them now?" The people present looked at each other and helplessly cupped their fists at Chu Xiu. "We are willing to abide by Cult Master Chu's rules." They regretted coming to the northern Yen land. Among the 3 kingdoms, Eastern Qi belonged to the Central Plains. It was vast and rich in resources. That was why the Sanskrit sect and Tianluo Temple had taken a liking to it. On the other hand, Western Chu had the 3 Pure Temple. Prime venerables like them did not want to be neighbors with the Daoists and Buddhists. That was why they came to the northern Yen land. They did not expect it to be the territory of the fierce Chu Xiu. Chapter 1382. Eastern Qi, Tianluo Treasure Temple. Tianluo Treasure Temple's new sect in Eastern Qi was not as ostentatious as the Daoists. Of course, they did not have the ability to build as ostentatious as the Daoists. The Tianluo Treasure Temple had spent tens of thousands of years accumulating countless materials to build it to its current state. They were even adding bricks and tiles from time to time. In the Tianluo Treasure Temple's Great Strength Hall, the head of the Life Transformation Pavilion, Zen Master Ji Shan, and the head of the Earth Treasury, Zen Master Ji Kong, as well as a few other heads were discussing the construction of the Tianluo Treasure Temple after they descended to the lower realm. Ji Kong stroked his beard and said in a deep voice, "These warriors from the lower realm used to be of the same lineage as us. Although the inheritance is somewhat broken, their martial arts have developed to another path. Different paths lead to the same goal. Even the performance of the low-level disciples is better than that of the Daoistian warriors. The disciples that my Tianluo Treasure Temple has recently accepted are all talented and strong. There are more than 10 of them. Even in the western regions, it is not easy to find so many talented disciples at once. This is also because we have just descended to the lower realm and the name of the Tianluo Treasure Temple is not well known yet. In the future, when the name of the Tianluo Treasure Temple is as deafening as it was in the Daoistian, I reckon that we will be able to recruit even more disciples." Zen Master Ji Shan nodded and said, "Very good. Do not underestimate these warriors from the lower realm. Their potential is actually higher than that of the Daoistian warriors. In the past, when the two-realm formation was still sealed, these warriors from the lower realm thought that the heaven and earth elemental opening was the peak. Hence, their overall strength is on the weaker side. However, the tempering and fighting that they have experienced is not weak. When the Daoistian warriors are still in secluded cultivation in their sects, these dream warriors from the lower realm have already begun to roam the pugilistic world and experience cruel life and death battles. Hence, their state of mind and abilities are even stronger than the Daoistian warriors of the same level. For such warriors, even if their attainments in Buddhism are not that obvious, they must still be accepted as disciples. We can teach Dharma in the future, but we can't teach mental power." At this time, Ji Kong said doubtfully, "However, I discovered that there doesn't seem to be any major Buddhist sects in the lower realms. If the Daoist sects can pass down their legacy and produce so many amazing figures, there's no reason why the Buddhist lineage can't even produce a top sect. The same goes for the Sanskrit sect. In the end, the Sanskrit sect didn't survive. Tian Luo Bao Sha lower realm was also in a hurry during this period of time, so he basically did not have the time to investigate these things. Just establishing a sect and sorting out the disciples they accepted had already consumed all of their time, so they were still not too clear about the scope of these forces in the lower realm. Right at this moment, a disciple suddenly reported from outside, "Chief, a large number of Buddhist disciples have appeared in the outside world, and they're requesting to join our Heaven-Net treasure temple." Everyone at the scene was stunned. They had just mentioned the Buddhist disciples, and someone had come to pay a visit. What a coincidence! At that moment, there was indeed a large number of Buddhist disciples outside the Heaven-Net treasure temple. They were all disciples of the Great Radiance Temple and Subodhi Monastery. Back then, after Chu Xiu destroyed the Subodhi Monastery and the Great Radiance Temple, the disciples of those two sects went into hiding. In fact, they even split up and hid everywhere. On top of that, Chu Xiu had placed all of his energy on the Daoist side, and did not pay much attention to them. Thus, during this period of time, the disciples of those two sects had not suffered too many losses. At that moment, the leader of the Great Radiance Temple was Su Yun. Back then, in order to delay Chu Xiu and the others and perish together with them, Su Yun had stepped into the profound understanding realm and escaped with the people of the Great Radiance Temple. At that moment, by relying on his many years of enduring cultivation, in addition to the fortuitous encounters during the Essence Tide, his cultivation had reached half-step martial immortal. Standing before Su Yun, he looked at the little monk in shock. He asked hesitantly, "You are Rama?" Back then, when Chu Xiu destroyed the Subodhi Monastery, Rama's physical body was destroyed by Chu Xiu's clear sky reflecting shadow. However, his primordial spirit was saved by monk Bukong, who risked his life and was placed with Xiao Mok. So, if Rama were to appear before him in the form of a primordial spirit or a possessed body, he would not be surprised. However, at that moment, the person standing before Su Yun was a child. He was only 10 years old. He had a handsome appearance and wore a white monk's robe. His body gave off a faint Buddhist light. What shocked Su Yun even more was that he could not see through the child's cultivation. Rama smiled. His eyes were filled with the vicissitudes of life. "Master Su Yun, it is a joyous occasion for old friends to meet again. However, we are also people who have fallen from grace. I wonder, can you still smile at this moment?" Su Yun did not understand what was going on with Rama. He was not a possessed body, nor was he a primordial spirit. Hearing that, he only sneered, "Why can't I smile? Back then, Chu Xiu destroyed my great light temple and made us homeless for many years. Right now, the experts of the Daoist Buddhist sect have descended. I have already investigated. The revered one of the world is a supreme expert of my Buddhist sect, a supreme existence who stands at the peak of the 9th heaven of martial immortal. As for the demonic path, it is extremely weak in the Daoist world. Only the demonic palace is stronger than the Kunlun devil cult. At that time, as long as the revered one of the world takes action, Chu Xiu will definitely die." Rama shook his head lightly and said, "So, Master Su Yun, your obsession is actually so deep." Su Yun frowned and asked, "Don't you have any obsession at all? Chu Xiu destroyed your body and Master Bukong died because of it. Even a Buddhist sacred ground like the Subodhi Monastery was occupied by the demonic path. Don't you hate it? Don't you want to kill Chu Xiu?" Rama said calmly, "I hated him in the beginning, and I still hate him now. However, my obsession is not as deep. The enmity between my Subodhi Monastery and Chu Xiu has been fated since the beginning. Or rather, it has been fated since 500 years ago. Xiao Moha's divination was karma. However, it was not a moment's karma. It was a lifetime's karma. I know it is not so easy to resolve the cycle of karma. However, I cannot let hatred take over my mind. Greed, anger, obsession, and hatred. Only Buddhas can eliminate them. I am not Buddhas, so I cannot eliminate them. However, I cannot be affected by them either. At least, to me, there are many things in this world that are more important than revenge. Master Su Yun, the demonic Buddha, only needs a thought. Don't become a demon for the sake of eliminating a demon. Su Yun narrowed his eyes and said coldly, obsession? Killing Chu Xiu and destroying the Kunlun devil cult are my obsession. If I destroy the Kunlun devil cult, my obsession will naturally disappear. Why should I worry about becoming a demon? Rama shook his head gently. He knew that he could not persuade Su Yun. Over the years, Su Yun's obsession had already penetrated deep into his heart. Although they were both people who had fallen into the same predicament, they were not people who walked the same path. At this moment, the gates of the Heavenly Net Monastery opened. All the warriors of the Heavenly Net Monastery came out to take a look. They wanted to know what the first Buddhist faction to rely on them looked like. However, after seeing them, all the warriors of the Heavenly Net Monastery were shocked at the same time. It was not because of anything else but because the quality of the disciples of the Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi Monastery was too high. They were many times better than the disciples they had accepted before. It should be known that the Sabodhi Monastery and the Great Light Temple used to be the North and South Buddhist sects. They were the leaders of the Buddhist sects in the pugilistic world. 90% of the Buddhist sect experts in the pugilistic world were in these two sections. Furthermore, after the sect was destroyed, none of the disciples who could stay and grow were useless. They were all disciples with excellent mental states and potential. Moreover, their leaders, Su Yun and Rama, were even more shocking. Su Yun had condensed 9 domains. His talent was even stronger than Su Ci's in the past. Zen Master Jishan and the others could tell how strong Su Yun's talent was just by looking at the Buddhist aura that was emitted from his body. If such a warrior were to be placed in the Daoist, he would almost certainly become a martial immortal. He would definitely be a candidate for the first seat of the Heavenly Net Monastery. However, what surprised them even more was Rama. Rama's current state was very strange. He did not possess a body. He was originally a child less than 10 years old. However, the Buddhist aura that he emitted was close to that of a martial immortal. That's right, he was a martial immortal. However, he was not a martial immortal. In fact, he didn't even seem to be a martial immortal. He was merely an ordinary child. However, the Buddhist charm was hidden within his body. Such an existence could be said to have a natural spiritual body. His Buddhist aura was naturally formed. He was definitely a genius that only appeared once in 1,000 years. His talent was even stronger than the most outstanding successor of the Life Transformation Pavilion, Fajing. Su Yun from the Great Light Temple and Rama from the Sabodhi Monastery greet the masters. Zen Master Jishan and the others' eyes were filled with endless joy. This time, they had gained more things than they had imagined in the lower realm. If these disciples were nurtured well, the strength of the Heavenly Net Monastery in the next generation would definitely skyrocket. Zen Master Jishan's face revealed a warm smile. Have the two of you brought your disciples here to join the Heavenly Net Monastery? The Heavenly Net Monastery is the leader of the Buddhist sect in the Daoist. Your legacies must have been left behind by the Heavenly Net Monastery 10,000 years ago. Therefore, our two lineages are actually one family. Now that the two of you have joined us, it is equivalent to returning home to the lineage of the Buddhist sect. The Heavenly Net Monastery welcomes all of you. We will treat all of you equally and build the glory of the Buddhist sect together. Although the Buddhist sect of the Western region also had a part in the Sanskrit sect, they had directly ignored the Heavenly Net Monastery. The heretics of the Sanskrit sect, what they cultivated was called Buddhism. Were they worthy of being called Buddhism? What a joke! Su Yun cupped his hands and said in a deep voice, "We know the position of the Heavenly Net Monastery in the Daoist, and we have specially come to join you. As homeless people, we do not dare to raise any conditions. We only hope that the Heavenly Net Monastery can help us take revenge for the annihilation of our sects on account of the fact that we are all part of the Buddhist sect." The people of the Heavenly Net Monastery were stunned. No wonder they did not see anyone from the Buddhist sect when the Heavenly Gates array broke. They did not expect that they had been annihilated, and these people were all survivors. Zen Master Jishan said in a deep voice, "Who was so bold to actually annihilate the Buddhist orthodoxy of the Heavenly Net Monastery in the lower realm?" Su Yun let out a long breath and said hatefully, "The leader of the Kunlun devil cult, Chu Xiu." Chapter 1383. When the people of the Tianluo Temple heard this name, they were all stunned. They never thought that this person would be Chu Xiu. This was because most of the people in the Tianluo Temple had a good impression of Chu Xiu, including Zen Master Jishan and the others. Although they could see that Chu Xiu had some ulterior motives, they still treated Chu Xiu as half an ally. The enemy of an enemy was a friend. Chu Xiu had an unresolvable feud with the Sanskrit sect. He had saved their disciple from the Sanskrit sect once and joined forces with the Tianluo Temple twice to severely injure the Sanskrit sect. He was considered a good ally. They could not believe that Chu Xiu had destroyed two of their top sects in the lower realm and then joined forces with them in the Daoist without batting an eyelid. Fa Ming, who had been saved by Chu Xiu in the past, stood up and angrily rebuked Su Yun. "Impossible. How could Cult Master Chu do such a thing? In the Daoist, Cult Master Chu has joined forces with the Tianluo Temple more than once or twice. Without Cult Master Chu, the Tianluo Temple would not have been able to gain such an advantage against the Sanskrit sect. Based on my understanding of Cult Master Chu, he has always been a person who does not offend those who do not offend him. You must have provoked Cult Master Chu first, which is why you have ended up like this. You say that you are disciples of the Buddhist sect, but 10,000 years have passed. Who knows what your Dharma has evolved into? Is it still the same as the Tianluo Temple?" Some of the warriors from the Tianluo Temple looked at the people from the Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi Monastery with doubtful eyes. It was not that they could not tell right from wrong, but what Fa Ming said did make sense. 10,000 years had passed, and the cultivation methods were already somewhat different. What about the Dharma? Would there be any changes as well? Moreover, this kind of thing was first come, first served. They had known Chu Xiu earlier than Su Yun and the others. Chu Xiu had given them the impression that he was an honest and reliable ally. Now, Su Yun came over and said that Chu Xiu had destroyed their two Buddhist sects, so they couldn't be blamed for being suspicious. Su Yun was dumbfounded as he looked at the people of the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple. He had never expected that they would have such a reaction. Shouldn't they help me denounce Chu Xiu with righteous indignation? But why did they all seem to be on Chu Xiu's side? Just what had Chu Xiu done in the Daoist Empire that the Buddhist sect of the Heavenly Luo Temple would protect him like this? Zen Master Jishan shouted sternly, "Shut up. We are all people of the Buddhist sect. No matter how the Buddhist Dharma changes, it is still the Buddhist Dharma. Su Yun, Rama, you two tell us, what is going on?" Fa Ming could not see the details of Su Yun and Rama, but Zen Master Jishan could see that the aura of their cultivation methods could not be faked. They were indeed of the same origin. Moreover, from the very beginning, Zen Master Jishan had sensed that Chu Xiu was a person full of lies and had a profound heart. He had no choice but to believe his words, but not all of them. Now, it seemed that there was indeed a problem. Su Yun glanced at Rama, gritted his teeth, and said first, "Chu Xiu is an absolute devil of the present age. He is second only to the one from 500 years ago. No. He is even more evil than the cult master of the devil sect, Dugu Weiwei. This person is ruthless, scheming, and unscrupulous. He is shameless and untrustworthy. He is definitely a devil among devils. He has stirred up the martial arts world in the lower bound, and blood has flowed like a river. Su Si's death made Su Yun fall into hatred and obsession. He almost used all the vicious adjectives he could think of to describe Chu Xiu. He told him about Chu Xiu's rise in the martial arts world to the destruction of his great light temple. After listening to him, the warriors of the heavenly Luo temple looked at each other. They really could not believe that the Chu Xiu that Su Yun described was the same person as the Chu Xiu that they knew. According to Su Yun, Chu Xiu was simply not a human. It was even possible that he was an extraterrestrial devil that came to the lower bound to destroy the world. Rama shook his head and sighed. Let me say it. Then, Luo Mo recounted the incident again. However, Luo Mo's narration was much more objective. He narrated it from the perspective of a bystander. Frankly speaking, the grudge between the lower bounds Buddhist sect and Chu Xiu was a battle between the righteous and demonic factions. Since Chu Xiu had chosen the demonic faction, the two sides were destined to not be able to coexist peacefully. In the end, Rama sighed and said, after the destruction of the Sabodhi monastery, although I was only left with the body of a primordial spirit, because I had fused with the Sabodhi tree, I comprehended the power of rules and touched the barrier of martial immortal. At that time, I no longer had a physical body. Although I had the possession technique and my fellow disciples were willing to give up their physical bodies to let my primordial spirit possess them, I refused. Because my primordial spirit was already tainted with the power of rules, even if it was just a primordial spirit, it could still exist. At that time, I met a pregnant lady who had been killed by a robber. She was about to give birth. Although she was dead, the fetus still had a chance to live. I did not want to be troubled by hatred and obsession for the rest of my life, so I chose to disperse my primordial spirit. My primordial spirit fused with the pregnant lady's body and gave birth to the baby. In the future, he would be the abbot of the Sabodhi monastery. As for whether he wanted to take revenge or lead the Sabodhi monastery to rebuild the monastery, that was his choice. However, unexpectedly, 2 years ago, the primordial chi wave came and reappeared the primordial spirit in my body, allowing me to regain my memories of the past. This can only be said to be fate. The Sabodhi monastery is willing to join the heavenly Luo treasure monastery. However, what we seek is not rewards, but inheritance. I only ask for one thing from all of you, and that is to take back the Sabodhi monastery from the hands of the Kunlun devil cult. Whether to kill Chu Xiu, whether to destroy the Kunlun devil cult or not, the choice lies in all of your hands. After hearing Rama's words, Zen Master Jishan and the others looked at Rama in a completely different light. They finally understood what Rama's current state was. He was a reincarnated spirit child. In the eyes of most people, reincarnation was a nonsense. If one died, then so be it. How could he come back to life? Wouldn't that mean that the whole world was filled with experts? However, in reality, there were similar records in the heavenly Luo treasure monastery. If some top experts voluntarily dispersed their life force before their lifespan ended and preserved a bit of their primordial spirit, it was possible for it to be placed into the body of an unborn baby. That baby was born with a high level of talent, but it might not have the memories of its past life. It could be said that only very coincidental events could awaken the memories of its past life and reincarnate successfully. Otherwise, it would not be called reincarnation, but an early death. As for the probability of this happening, it was almost zero. This was because this matter was only recorded. As for whether it was successful or not, there was no record. Rama could be considered to have been fated. He had never thought of reincarnating. He just wanted to be free, but he did not expect that his reincarnation would succeed. Zen Master Jishan digested what the two said and said in a deep voice, "So now, what the two of you want is to kill Chu Xiu and destroy the Kunlun devil cult. The other is to return to Sabodhi monastery?" Su Yun and Rama nodded at the same time. Zen Master Jishan thought for a moment and said, killing Chu Xiu and destroying the Kunlun devil cult is temporarily impossible. Su Yun exclaimed, why? Could it be that even with the strength of the heavenly Luo treasure monastery, we can't kill Chu Xiu? Zen Master Jishan said with slight embarrassment, it's not that we can't kill him, but there is something on Chu Xiu's body that we have scruples about, so we can't kill him. Hearing Rama and the others talk about 500 years ago, Zen Master Jishan and the others had already guessed that the existence sealed in High Heaven sect should be the religion master of the demon cult from 500 years ago. As for why Chu Xiu did not release Dugu Weiwei, Zen Master Jishan thought that Chu Xiu's selfishness was causing trouble. He was now the religion master of the demon cult. If he released the religion master of the demon cult from 500 years ago, what would happen to him? So as long as they did not push him too far, Chu Xiu should not release Dugu Weiwei. But on the other hand, if they wanted to kill Chu Xiu now, unless they had a chance to kill him in one blow, they would not even have time to activate the spirit array. Otherwise, once Dugu Weiwei was released, the scene from 500 years ago would repeat itself. What happened 500 years ago was a bit shameful, so Zen Master Jishan would not tell Su Yun and the others too much. He just said, don't worry, the two of you. Chu Xiu destroyed the orthodoxy of my Buddhist sect in the lower realm. No matter what, there must be an explanation for this matter. Although we can't destroy the Kunlun devil cult and kill Chu Xiu for the time being, with the current power of the heavenly treasure temple, it should not be a problem for us to take back the Sabodhi monastery for the time being. Rama nodded indifferently. He had seen through many things, so he was not in a hurry now. Although Su Yun was a little unwilling, he also knew that this was already a game at the martial immortal level. Since Zen Master Jishan said it was impossible, it should really be impossible. However, Su Yun was a little confused. Was Chu Xiu really that lucky? Even if he was in the Daoist Ocean, he could still live well, even to the point that the heavenly treasure temple was afraid of him. At this time, in the South China, all the people under Chu Xiu's command returned to the South China after solving the matter of the Northern Yen. Perhaps because it had not been developed on a large scale, the heaven and earth essence of the South China was very rich. It was almost the same as the South China on the Daoist Ocean side. Therefore, as usual, only Shen Feiying and Bai Wuji were left in the Northern Yen. The real elites of the Kunlun devil cult were cultivating in the South China. At this time, Chu Wuji suddenly knocked on the door of Chu Xiu's retreat secret room in a hurry. He said with a nervous expression, "There is big trouble. The heavenly treasure temple is rushing to our sect with a group of people." Some disciples reported that they saw Su Yun beside the people of the heavenly treasure temple, as well as the disciples of the Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi monastery. Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. "Oh, really? I thought they would endure for a while before showing up. I didn't expect them to come so soon." Chapter 1384. Chu Xiu was not surprised that Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery would seek refuge with Tianluo Treasure Temple. He did not spend a lot of effort to destroy the remnants of these two sects because it was unnecessary. The people from the Heavenly Net Treasure Buddhist sect were not blind or deaf. Even if Chu Xiu expended a lot of effort to kill the remnants of these two sects, the Heavenly Net Treasure Buddhist sect would still be able to find out what had happened when they descended to the lower realm. After all, Chu Xiu could not let the entire lower realm pretend to be deaf and mute. His power had not reached that level yet. As for what Tianluo Treasure Temple would choose, they might fall out with him, but they would definitely not fight him to the death for Sabodhi Monastery and Great Light Temple. The reason was simple. Even if the people of those two sects were added together, they weren't worth that much. At the very least, they weren't worth enough to make the people of Sky Luo Treasure Temple follow him, Chu Xiu, and the Kunlun demon cult to the death. When the people of Tianluo Treasure Temple arrived, they found that Chu Xiu was already waiting for them at the entrance of the Nanman Branch Temple. The entire Nanman land had been occupied by Chu Xiu. It was not surprising that he knew of their arrival in advance. The leader of Tianluo Treasure Temple was master of the Xitigarbha Pavilion, Ji Kong. Zen Master Jishan had to stay in Tianluo Treasure Temple. Moreover, they were not here to fight to the death with Chu Xiu today. They just wanted the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery back. Chu Xiu looked at the many monks who came and said with a warm smile, "Master Su Yun, long time no see. How have you been? And Master Rama, I didn't expect you to become younger and younger. Congratulations." When he saw Chu Xiu again, Rama's expression did not change, but Su Yun was already close to being ferocious. "Chu Xiu. In the past, you destroyed my Great Light Temple. I wonder if you regret not killing us. The heavenly law reincarnates. Your Kunlun devil cult will have this day sooner or later." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He didn't expect Su Yun to hate him to this extent. Su Yun's mentality was already out of balance. In Chu Xiu's memory, Su Yun had always been calm. It was rare to see him lose his composure like this. Chu Xiu said indifferently, "Heavenly Tao reincarnation? 500 years ago, you exterminated my Kunlun devil cult, and 500 years later, you took advantage of my Daoist visit to seal my Kunlun devil cult's rootless sacred flame. Don't you think this is the cycle of the heavenly Tao?" Su Yun still wanted to say something, but he was stopped by Ji Kong. Since the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery had already been destroyed, what was the point of talking about these things at this time? Ji Kong stared at Chu Xiu and said in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, I really didn't expect you to do such a thing. You deceived us so badly." Chu Xiu shook his head and said, "Master Ji Kong, what you said doesn't make sense. When have I ever lied to you? The Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery are Buddhist sects in the lower realm, while your Heavenly Luo Temple is Buddhist sect in the upper realm. I have enmity with the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery, but I have no enmity with your Heavenly Luo Temple. Master Ji Kong, think about it carefully. Among the Daoist people, have I ever harmed your Heavenly Luo Temple? On the contrary, when you and I joined forces to deal with the Sanskrit sect, our cooperation was quite good." Ji Kong shook his head and said, "We're all Buddhist sects, so what's the difference? My Heavenly Luo Temple doesn't want to pursue the past enmity anymore. I came here today for one thing." Chu Xiu asked, "What is it?" Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "I want to return to the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery." "Impossible." When Chu Xiu heard this, he refused without even thinking about it. In fact, it was not a big deal to return the Great Light Temple to them. It was already in ruins. Moreover, there were 3 prime venerables and more than a dozen Daoist forces in the northern Yen land. It was already a mess, so Chu Xiu could only set rules for them within his power. However, Sabodhi Monastery was different. Sabodhi Monastery was complete, and there was even the Sabodhi treasure tree. Although Chu Xiu could not use it for the time being, not using it and handing it over were 2 different concepts. Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "Is there really no room for negotiation?" Chu Xiu said lightly, "Master Ji Kong, you want 2 places from me as soon as you open your mouth. Is this the attitude of a negotiation?" Ji Kong took a deep breath. He knew this would be the result. When they became allies with Chu Xiu, they already knew Chu Xiu's character. It was not an ordinary kind of toughness. However, they were allies at that time. When facing the Sanskrit, Chu Xiu's tough attitude naturally made them happy. But now, Chu Xiu's stubborn attitude gave Ji Kong a headache. Ji Kong's face darkened, and he said coldly, "Cult Master Chu, as far as I know, you have offended a lot of people. The Sanskrit has already regarded you as a serious threat. Destroying a hall of the Sanskrit is something that the Heavenly Luo Temple has not been able to do for thousands of years. There is also the Dean of the Xinghe Martial Arts Academy, Xinghe Unfettered, Meng Xinghe. You killed his sworn brother, Yi Weikong, and now he wants to kill you. Today, you have rejected my conditions, which also means that you have formed a death feud with the heavenly Luo temple. At the same time, you have offended 3 top Daoist forces. Cult Master Chu, do you really not feel any pressure? Chu Xiu shrugged indifferently and said, when there are too many lice, there is no itch. When there are too many debts, there is no need to worry. What's the difference between offending 2 or 3? Anyway, I can't beat any of them now. At most, I will directly release that person, and everyone can play together. Chu Xiu's attitude made Ji Kong's eyebrows twitch, but there was nothing he could do. Finally, he let out a long breath and said, Cult Master Chu, in the past, you and I also fought side by side. Today, this poor monk does not want to force you too much. Let's fight. If this poor monk wins, you will return the Great Light Temple and Sabodhi Monastery to their 2 sections. If this poor monk loses, I will immediately retreat and never step into the southern barbaric land. What do you think? Ji Kong had no other choice. He was at the 7th heaven, and Chu Xiu was at the 5th heaven. At this time, he proposed a fight. It even felt like he was bullying and losing his reputation. But now, it was really difficult for him to get off. Su Yun and Rama had just joined the heavenly Luo temple. It was fine if the request to kill Chu Xiu and destroy the Kunlun devil cult could not be fulfilled. If he could not even fulfill the request to return to their previous sects, then his heavenly Luo temple would seem to be too useless. But now, Chu Xiu's attitude was unusually tough. At this time, if he forced it, there was no other way but to attack the Kunlun devil cult. But the heavenly Luo temple was not crazy to that extent. Therefore, he could only fight with Chu Xiu in public to solve this problem. If he won, everything would be fine. If he lost, he could let Su Yun and Rama see that they had also contributed. At least, they would not be disappointed. Besides, Ji Kong did not think he would lose. Although Chu Xiu had the battle record of killing a 8th heaven expert, Yi Weikong was a 8th heaven expert who had lost his rationality. He could not be considered a normal 8th heaven expert. Since Master Ji Kong is interested, would also like to experience the sharpness of the heavenly Luo temple's Buddhist techniques. In the Daoist kingdom, Chu Xiu had never fought against the cultivators of the heavenly Luo temple. After all, they were allies who had a very good relationship. Both sides retreated. Zen Master Ji Kong extended his hand to Chu Xiu and said, Cult Master Chu, please go ahead. He was a 7th heaven martial immortal. In terms of seniority, he was much older than Chu Xiu. So, he was a bit embarrassed to attack first. Chu Xiu did not hold back. The instant Ji Kong finished speaking, he attacked. His attack was so powerful that it could collapse the heavens and rend the earth. He immediately used the phenomenon of heaven and earth. At the same time, the indestructible holy demon body was also wrapped around it. The huge divine power smashed down with a punch. The power seemed to be able to shatter the heavens and the earth. The storm of power it brought even formed a huge tornado that swept down. Ji Kong's eyebrows jumped. Chu Xiu actually used a divine power right from the start. What kind of fighting style was that? Ji Kong put his palms together and chanted scriptures. Swastikas appeared around his body. In the end, they merged into one, turning into a huge swastika that stretched for hundreds of feet above his head. It blocked Chu Xiu's punch. The power of the lawful embodiment of heaven and earth, coupled with the power of the indestructible holy demon body, seemed to have pushed his strength to the extreme. The swastika Buddhist seal instantly shattered. Chu Xiu's punches did not stop. They smashed down one punch after another, smashing Ji Kong's entire body into the ground. The earth trembled, as if an earth dragon was flipping over. After several punches, a lake of several thousand feet appeared on the ground. Looking at Chu Xiu's demon-like figure, Su Yun felt powerless for the first time. He felt despair. Even when Chu Xiu destroyed the Great Light Temple, he did not feel despair. At that time, Su Ci sacrificed his life to cover their retreat. Otherwise, judging by Su Yun's personality, he would have gone to fight Chu Xiu with his life after entering the profound understanding of heaven and earth. Su Yun had always been a proud person. Back then, in order to condense the 9 domains, he even chose to suppress his own cultivation. He wanted to enter the profound understanding of heaven and earth in the most perfect state. However, today, when he saw Chu Xiu attack, it was also the first time he saw a martial immortal expert attack. The destructive power made Su Yun truly despair. So what if he had a perfect profound understanding of heaven and earth? Before such inhuman power, he was like an ant. If the current Chu Xiu were to attack the Great Light Temple again, he would probably be able to destroy the Great Light Temple with a single punch. On the other side, Luo Mo's eyes were wide open. He stared unblinkingly at the power that Chu Xiu released when he attacked. Compared to Su Yun's despair, he was more interested in the power that Chu Xiu had displayed. Is this a martial immortal? Although Luo Mo also had a foundation comparable to a martial immortal, his physical body could not withstand that power. So, he was temporarily unable to fully unleash it. At that moment, a resounding Buddhist chant descended from the crater that Chu Xiu blasted out. A Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva's dharmic image rose from it. It was the Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva, who had suppressed thousands of evil spirits from hell and was comparable to a Buddha. Chapter 1385. There were no weaklings among the Tianluo Treasure Temple's martial immortals. The Ksitigarbha Pavilion was one of the strongest pavilions in the Tianluo Treasure Temple. Although Ji Kong was old, he was strong with age, and his foundation was even deeper. Although the few punches from Chu Xiu's law embodiment of heaven and earth made him look a little embarrassed, they didn't really hurt him. The huge Ksitigarbha Bodhisattva law embodiment of heaven and earth stood between heaven and earth, and any rules were completely suppressed under it. Ksitigarbha prison suppression. This was also one of the inherited magical powers of the Tianluo Treasure Temple and the Ksitigarbha Pavilion. Its power was extremely overbearing, and it didn't seem to match Ji Kong's thin and weak figure. The law embodiment of heaven and earth clashed with the powerful magical power of Ksitigarbha prison suppression. One was an extreme power magical power, and the other was an overbearing magical power that could suppress countless rules. The two clashed, and there was no clear winner. Chu Xiu frowned slightly. Ji Kong's strength was really beyond his imagination. Among the seventh heaven martial immortals, Chu Xiu had only fought with Fang Daochen and Mu Baishuang. Mu Baishuang was a standard swordsman, and his martial path was sharp and singular. It wasn't too difficult for Chu Xiu to fight against Mu Baishuang with his agile and ever-changing martial path. On the other hand, Fang Daochen's power was extremely meticulous. Although he could reach the level of using the power of rules to set up a formation, the changes in his power were insufficient. Chu Xiu could completely break through everything with his strength. Only Ji Kong was very difficult to deal with. His foundation of power and mastery of the power of rules had almost reached the peak of the seventh heaven, and he wasn't at a disadvantage when fighting against the law embodiment of heaven and earth. Chu Xiu narrowed his eyes and dispersed his magical powers with Ji Kong almost at the same time. Since they were evenly matched, there was no meaning in using magical powers again, other than wasting energy for no reason. In the next moment, the 6 paths of reincarnation bracelet on Chu Xiu's right hand shone brightly, and the 6 paths of Saha wondrous splendor wheels appeared, enveloping Ji Kong within it. The power of the 6 paths of wheels spun wildly. Ji Kong frowned slightly. He could naturally recognize that the foundation of this technique was actually a Buddhist technique of his heavenly Luo treasure Buddha lineage. However, he had only seen the power of the 6 paths of reincarnation in ancient books. Now, almost no one cultivated the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha. Sensing the power of the six paths Saha wondrous splendor wheel, Ji Kong chanted a scripture. Under the influence of the scripture, the power of the laws around him revolved around him, forming a formation that resisted the pulling and strangling power of the six paths of samsara. Ksitigarbha Origin Vow Scripture. Ji Kong had been reciting this scripture all his life. When he didn't know martial arts, he began to recite it. When he stepped into the real pellet state, he still recited it. When he reached the martial immortal realm, the power in this scripture had even been in line with the rules of heaven and earth, forming a kind of magical power, but it wasn't a magical power. Seeing that the scene was in a stalemate again, Chu Xiu retracted the six paths Saha wondrous splendor wheel. The breaking formation on his waist was already unsheathed, and he launched a powerful slash with boundless demonic energy. 1/swallow the sky. Suppress. Ji Kong groaned and formed a Buddhist seal with his hand. He condensed a swastika Buddhist seal with absolute power to resist Chu Xiu's slash. But in the next moment, the demonic energy on the 1/swallow the sky began to flow like a living thing, turning into a huge demonic shadow. It directly wrapped Ji Kong's entire body in it, eroding the power around him. The power of the creation sky demon, the cycle of life and death, could assimilate any kind of power. However, countless golden Sanskrit words appeared around Ji Kong's body, and Buddhist light soared into the sky, resisting the power of the creation sky demon. That was the indestructible golden body, and it was cultivated to the extreme, comparable to the power of a divine power. Ji Kong, who was slightly thin and weak, threw a punch. His power was condensed to the extreme, breaking through the obstruction of the creation sky demon. He retreated hurriedly, retracted his power, and said in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, we can't determine the victor. Let's not fight for now." Ji Kong looked calm on the surface, but his heart was filled with shock. He was not shocked by Chu Xiu's power, but Chu Xiu's endless means. If one method couldn't defeat you, then he would change to another. Since the beginning of the fight, how many methods had Chu Xiu used? He had both divine powers and powerful martial arts techniques, and Ji Kong also knew that Chu Xiu still had two powerful divine powers that could be called trump cards that he had not used yet. If the fight continued, Ji Kong did not know how many more methods Chu Xiu had, but he would run out of tricks. Moreover, if the fight continued, if both sides were really angry and it turned into a fight to the death, it would not be worth it. Chu Xiu also stopped and said indifferently, "Since it's a draw, what does Master Ji Kong plan to do? Retreat?" Ji Kong turned back to look at the indignant Su Yun and the indifferent Rama. If he retreated, these two would probably be disappointed with the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha. Zen Master Ji Shan had once said that they had to control the martial artists of these two sects in the lower realm and treat them equally. They even had to nurture them as the direct disciples of the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha, so they had to be loyal. If he left just like that, not only would it be embarrassing, but it would also easily cause Su Yun and Rama to lose faith in the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha. Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "Cult Master Chu, today, this poor monk brought the people of the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha here, not to fight to the death with you, but also not to go through the motions. The former encampments of the Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi Monastery must be taken back. Name a price, the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha is willing to trade things. As far as I know, these two places are useless to you. The Great Light Temple has already become ruins, and the Sabodhi Monastery is not compatible with the attributes of your Kunlun devil cult. Now, only a small number of your Kunlun devil cult disciples are stationed there." Chu Xiu raised his eyebrows slightly. He did not expect that Ji Kong would say such a thing. If it was a trade, it was not impossible. Of course, the most important thing was that looking at the appearance of the heavenly Luo treasure Buddha, they should value the people of Su Yun and Rama very much, so they were willing to pay a price to make them loyal. If he did not agree, they would probably continue to pester him again. At that moment, Chu Xiu suddenly thought of something. He thought for a moment, then said in a deep voice, "It's not impossible to trade. What I want is very simple. In the battle 500 years ago, your heavenly Luo treasure Buddha should have collected that person's blood essence. Although I don't know how much you have collected, it will definitely not be a small amount. I only need 50 drops, and I will return the Great Light Temple and the Sabodhi Monastery to you." In Chu Xiu's current state, his realm was actually higher than his foundation of power. He had fought many experts of the 6th and 7th layer of the heaven, and he still had the source of yin and yang in his body. So, his comprehension of the power of the source of rules had actually reached a very high level. However, his power could not keep up with Chu Xiu's comprehension of realm. After all, power needed a long time to accumulate. Starting from the first layer of the martial immortal realm, Chu Xiu had been relying on external power to cheat. However, when others borrowed external power, it would cause their realm to be unstable. On the other hand, Chu Xiu's realm far exceeded his foundation of power. Even if he relied on external power, his realm was still very solid. So, at that moment, there were only two ways that Chu Xiu could think of using external power. One was to rely on the source of yin and yang to cultivate. However, it was too dangerous and full of unknowns. If he was not careful, he could easily play himself to death, unless he had an expert of Ning Xuanji's level by his side to protect him. The second way was to absorb the blood essence left behind by Dugu Weiwei in the past. After all, he was considered a part of Dugu Weiwei. Absorbing Dugu Weiwei's blood essence was equivalent to taking back what belonged to him in the past. After hearing Chu Xiu's request, Ji Kong frowned, looking a little conflicted. They could not refine Dugu Weiwei's blood essence. After so many years, their heavenly Luo treasure temple had not researched anything valuable from it. It was almost equivalent to trash. However, now that they knew that Chu Xiu had the ability to release Dugu Weiwei and asked for Dugu Weiwei's blood essence, they were afraid that there was some kind of conspiracy involved. After thinking about it, Ji Kong decided to agree to Chu Xiu's conditions. In the battle 500 years ago, almost all the major sects had collected some of Dugu Weiwei's blood essence. With Chu Xiu's current strength and the forces he controlled, the blood essence in the eastern domain was probably already in his hands. So, they were not lacking in the heavenly Luo treasure temple's blood essence. Moreover, even if Dugu Weiwei was released, it would be trouble for the entire Daoist, not trouble for the heavenly Luo treasure temple alone. However, the matter in front of them was related to the interests of the heavenly Luo treasure temple. Ji Kong said in a deep voice, "I agree to your conditions, but my heavenly Luo treasure temple did not collect that much blood essence at all. There were only 48 drops, and I wasted 6 drops during my research." Chu Xiu sneered and said, "Who are you lying to? The world sword sects were able to collect more than 20 drops. With the heavenly Luo treasure temple's strength at the time, how could it have only collected more than 40 drops? Ji Kong said angrily, "A monk does not lie. This poor monk has already decided to make a deal. Do you think I will lie to you about the quantity?" Seeing Ji Kong's expression, Chu Xiu finally believed that the heavenly Luo treasure temple really only had that much blood essence. Chu Xiu nodded and said, "All right, we'll exchange the blood essence with one hand and the place with the other. When the blood essence is here, I will immediately withdraw the disciples stationed at Sabodhi Monastery." Ji Kong snorted coldly and immediately sent someone back to the heavenly Luo treasure temple to get the blood essence from the Daoist side. Although most of the elite warriors of the heavenly Luo treasure temple had already descended to the lower realm, some of the accumulated treasures and other things still had to be placed at the Daoist heavenly Luo treasure temple. It took an entire month for Dugu Weiwei's blood essence to return to him. After inspecting the goods, Chu Xiu immediately sent someone to withdraw the disciples stationed at Sabodhi Monastery. The Great Light Temple of the Northern Yen didn't matter. It was just a ruin, and no one even looked after it. However, after Chu Xiu's people withdrew, Luo Mo did not send too many disciples back. He only sent a small number of disciples back to repair the sect. The heavenly Luo treasure temple had not completely fallen out with Chu Xiu, and the southern land was still within Chu Xiu's sphere of influence. Stuffing the disciples into Subodhi Monastery at this time was not placing a spy in Chu Xiu's sphere of influence, but sending meat to Chu Xiu's mouth. Chapter 1386. The confrontation between Tian Luo Treasure Temple and Chu Xiu did not cause too much of a commotion. Neither side lost, but both felt that they had won. Chu Xiu was worried about how to quickly accumulate his strength, so he used 2 places he didn't need in exchange for a large amount of Dugu Weiwei's blood essence. On the other hand, the Heavenly Net Treasure Temple had used Dugu Weiwei's essence blood, which they had no use for, to exchange for 2 sects' territories. This made Shuyun and Rama submit to them. No matter what, it was worth it. After getting Dugu Weiwei's blood essence, Chu Xiu wasted no time and went into seclusion. While he was in seclusion, the Sanskrit sect became restless, and the reason was related to Chu Xiu. Rama and Shuyun submitted and brought a large number of elite warriors to join Tian Luo Treasure Temple. It could be said that the quality of Tian Luo Treasure Temple's disciples skyrocketed, which made the Sanskrit sect more and more uneasy. Chu Xiu had destroyed one of the halls of the Sanskrit sect, so they were no longer as strong as the Heavenly Treasure Buddha. If they didn't make use of the opportunity in the lower realm to catch up, they might really be eliminated. However, when the Sanskrit sect recruited disciples in the lower realm, they were embarrassed to find that very few disciples were willing to join them. On the northern Yen side, there were many warriors in Chu Xiu's sphere of influence who were willing to join the primeval venerables. In West Chu, the Three Pure Temple used its reputation as the supreme leader of Taoism to attract many warriors to join. There were even some Taoism warriors who had specially rushed over from eastern Qi and northern Yen. As for the Star River Martial Academy, because of the discrimination education and the extravagance, it also attracted many warriors. There was no need to mention Tian Luo Treasure Temple. 2 sects took the initiative to join, and the number and quality of the younger generation of disciples skyrocketed. Only the Sanskrit sect had almost no harvest. In the Sanskrit sect's hall in the lower realm, Ranaja frowned and said in a deep voice, "What's going on? After all this time, only these few people are willing to join our Sanskrit sect?" The palace master of the Brahma Heaven Palace's Peacock Divine Palace, Suana, said helplessly, "Our Brahma religion is quite famous in the Daoist world, but no one in the lower realm knows about our heritage. Even those martial artists who joined before thought that our Brahma religion is also a branch of the Buddhism sect, and treated our relationship with the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple as the northern and southern Buddhist sects in the lower realm." Ranaja frowned and said, "Why didn't the legacy of my Sanskrit lineage be passed down?" Suana said, "Perhaps when our Sanskrit left the lower realm, we brought most of our power to the Daoist, causing our inheritance in the lower realm to be completely cut off after 10,000 years. I've done some research recently, and the only sect that has anything to do with the Sanskrit sect is the 6th demon sect, but it's not that strong." Ranaja waved his hand and said, "Even if it's not strong, it's still better than it is now. We can give him the conditions to join our Sanskrit sect." Suana said helplessly, "It's useless even if we give him the conditions. The 6th demon sect is a branch of the Devil Dao in the lower realm, and Chu Xiu's Kunlun Devil cult has already unified the Devil Dao in the lower realm." Damn it! Ranaja, who had always been calm and composed, couldn't help but curse. He had thought that the lower realm was an opportunity for everyone else, but to his Sanskrit sect, it was like a sightseeing trip, and they wouldn't get anything. At this time, Yinma suddenly laughed strangely and said, "Isn't it easy to get a disciple? The eastern Qi in the lower realm is huge, and it's not smaller than our western region. There are so many sects and aristocratic families, we can just go to them one by one and ask for elite disciples, then force them to join our Sanskrit sect." Ranaja frowned and said, "We're recruiting disciples, not enemies. A melon that's forcefully picked won't be sweet." Yinma laughed coldly and said, who cares if it's sweet or not, as long as it can quench our thirst. Don't forget, our Sanskrit sex techniques are not something those ants in the lower realm can compare to. As long as one has the heart to pursue martial arts, after learning our techniques, it'll be easy to choose. Also, the Vishnu Palace is preparing to be rebuilt, and the last surviving palace master of the Divine Palace, Illusion Heavenly Palace Master Ji Shinlua, is not bad. He's developed many secret techniques that target the primordial spirit and even the mind of a martial artist. When the time comes, Ji Shinlua will use secret techniques to distort the mind of those who are stubborn, and even a melon that isn't sweet will become sweet. After saying that, Yanma also deliberately added, Ji Shinlua, that kid is not bad, very good, he is much stronger than his predecessor called Mariha. In the future, when the Vishnu Hall is truly rebuilt, I think this kid will be the lord of the hall. Rinaja said indifferently, whoever becomes the palace master is decided by the sect master, not something you and I can express our opinions on. Rinaja said this, but in his heart, he was thinking. Although Yanma's method was simple and crude, it was indeed the fastest way to achieve results. Moreover, the Sanskrit sect had always been domineering, simple, and crude. No one in the lower realm could stop them, so it was possible to do this. So Rinaja nodded, rarely agreeing with Yanma's suggestion. Let's do as you say. 3 months later, in the southern temple of the Kunlun devil cult, Chu Xiu had already refined all of Dugu Weiwei's blood essence, but he was still in seclusion to accumulate power. Chu Xiu had also discovered that although Dugu Weiwei's essence blood contained a great amount of energy, it was still possible for him to smoothly absorb it. However, at Chu Xiu's current level, it was impossible for him to directly cross over to the next level. So although the blood essence refined this time was more than the previous time, it still only allowed Chu Xiu to reach the peak of the 5th heaven, not the 6th. At this time, someone suddenly came to report that Mo Tianlin had come to visit. Although Mo Tianlin's power was not much, he was Chu Xiu's good friend. So the disciples of the Kunlun devil cult interrupted Chu Xiu's seclusion to specially inform him. When Chu Xiu came out of seclusion, he saw Luo Feiheng teasing Mo Tianlin in the main hall. Yo, yo, yo. Now that you're the family master, you're acting all high and mighty. I heard you took in a few more concubines. What happened to the infatuated one who cried when he was dumped? Mo Tianlin laughed awkwardly. After all, I'm the family master. I have to have children. Please understand. Also, don't slander me. When have I ever cried? Luo Feiheng pursed his lips. Have children? Is that why you're a stud horse? Also, you've already experienced the vitality tide in the lower realm, why are you still so weak? Is it because you're having children every day that you've neglected your cultivation? Luo Feiheng patted Mo Tianlin's shoulder and said in an experienced tone, men need to control themselves when it comes to sex. Look at how haggard you look. I'm still young and beautiful. Lu Fengxian is even more charming than 10 years ago. Cult Master Chu's appearance hasn't changed much over the years. Only you look like you've been ravaged. TSK, I can't even look at you. Do you need me to ask Long Ling, or for some aphrodisiac goo? She has a lot of goo at her place. There must be some aphrodisiac goo. Why don't you eat more bananas? That Xiang Wu guy always said that bananas are aphrodisiac. Maybe it will work? Mo Tianlin was already on the verge of tears from Luo Feiheng's teasing. Ever since this woman returned from the Daoist Ocean, her personality seemed to have become even worse. Now, Mo Tianlin was the head of the clan. If it was someone else who teased him like this, he would definitely fall out with them. But facing Luo Feiheng, whom he had only known for a short period of time, he really didn't dare to fall out. Moreover, even if he did, he wouldn't be able to defeat Luo Feiheng. Luo Feiheng was much stronger than him now. At this moment, seeing Chu Xiu walking over, Mo Tianlin hurriedly broke away from Luo Feiheng. As he walked over, he said, "Congratulations, Brother Chu. The Kunlun devil cult's name has spread far and wide in both the upper and lower realms. It's even more impressive than 500 years ago." Luo Feiheng curled his lips. This person was really getting more and more boring as he grew older. Chu Xiu smiled and said, "Famous far and wide? I'm afraid it's infamy spreading far and wide. Brother Mo, what brings you here today?" Mo Tianlin smiled bitterly and said, "Today, I'm here to ask Brother Chu for a favor." "There's no need to talk about favors between us. Brother Mo, just say it." Among his good friends on the Dragon and Tiger list, Mo Tianlin's strength could be said to be the weakest. Of course, it couldn't be said that he was weak. The current Mo Tianlin also had the cultivation of true fire spirit refinement realm. He was even stronger than the Mo clan's ancestor. But compared to monsters like Chu Xiu, Fang Qi Xiao, and Lu Fengxian, he was much weaker. Even Xia Xiaolu was a level stronger than him. Most importantly, Xia Xiaolu had a powerful master. He could do whatever he wanted. But Chu Xiu still admired Mo Tianlin. He didn't admire his strength, but his strength of character. Mo Tianlin was a person who didn't fight for anything. He seemed very indifferent. But in reality, he had his own bottom line. When the Mo clan was in danger, he could have asked Chu Xiu for help. But he didn't ask for help. Instead, he cultivated the hidden sword technique alone. He risked his life to deal with the changes in the Mo clan. Later, Chu Xiu established the Kunlun devil cult and became famous. It wouldn't be an exaggeration to say that he was famous in Jianghu. But at that time, Mo Tianlin never asked for anything from Chu Xiu. For so many years, Mo Tianlin quietly guarded his Mo clan. He never used Chu Xiu's power to develop himself. As a result, the new generation of martial artists and forces didn't even know that the Mo clan of Xiangyang, which was ranked in the middle of the 9 great clans, actually had a powerful friend like Chu Xiu. Friendship was friendship, and interests were interests. Mo Tianlin cherished the friendship he had when he was roaming Jianghu. So no matter how difficult it was, he wouldn't easily ask for help. He didn't want this friendship to be tainted with interests. Now that he personally came to ask Chu Xiu, it could be imagined that his Mo clan must have encountered something unsolvable. Otherwise, he wouldn't have come. With a sigh, Mo Tianlin said in a deep voice, "I can't stay in Eastern Qi anymore. So I want Brother Chu to help me allocate a territory in either the southern Barbarian land or the northern Yen land. I'm going to move the whole Mo clan to these 2 places." Chapter 1387. The location of a sect was very important to a force, and it was impossible to change it at will. For example, Chu Xiu's Kunlun devil cult was located on Kunlun Mountain because of the rootless sacred fire. Now, they were gathered in southern China because of the passage between the 2 worlds. Although the Mo family of Xiangyang was not a very powerful force, they had been developing there for thousands of years. They had a foundation in Xiangyang and all kinds of connections. Even if the Kunlun devil cult opened the way for them, they would have to start all over again. So, Chu Xiu asked in surprise, "Brother Mo, what happened in Eastern Qi? Why are you preparing to move your family?" Mo Tianlin sighed. "It's all because of the Sanskrit." "Brother Chu, was the Sanskrit so overbearing when it was still in the Daoist Empire? Not long ago, the Sanskrit ordered all the major sects and families within its sphere of influence to send disciples to join the Sanskrit according to their strength. This order is mandatory. If anyone dares to disobey, the palace master of the Sanskrit divine palace will immediately come to your door. Because the Mo family is one of the 9 major families, we are required to send 10 disciples to join the Sanskrit no matter how strong we are. But how many young disciples are there in the Mo family? This is breaking the roots of the Mo family." At this moment, Chu Xiu seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly said, "Brother Mo, tell me everything that the Sanskrit sect did in the lower realm in detail." When Mo Tianlin finished, Chu Xiu suddenly raised his eyebrows. "Brother Mo, you actually don't need to move your family out of Eastern Qi. I have a plan that can help you." Mo Tianlin's eyes lit up. "Brother Chu, are you going to lead the Kunlun devil cult to attack the Sanskrit?" Chu Xiu spread his hands and said, "We can't defeat them. The two temple masters of the Sanskrit sect are both 8th heavenly layer martial immortals. There are also several temple masters of the divine palace who are martial immortals. The strength of the two temple masters is astonishing. The current Kunlun devil cult is no match for them. Moreover, I have recently offended the heavenly Luo temple. If I attack the Sanskrit sect, I will also be stepping into the heavenly Luo temple's territory. Whether I win or lose, the heavenly Luo temple will hit me while I'm down." Mo Tianlin was speechless. Brother Chu is still the same Brother Chu. No matter where he goes, he always attracts hatred. To be able to offend all the top Daoist sects, this was also a kind of ability. However, even though we can't attack them by force, we can still outsmart them. Don't forget, we've been here for thousands of years, and the Sanskrit sect is the outsider. Brother Mo, this plan is a little dangerous, especially for you. But if it succeeds, the Brahmin sect would no longer dare to look down on our lower world sections. Do you dare to do it?" Mo Tianlin laughed and said, "Why wouldn't I dare? Brother Chu, what plan do you have? Just tell me." Mo Tianlin was not a person who liked to take risks, but he trusted Chu Xiu. At least he knew that Chu Xiu would not harm him, and that was enough. Chu Xiu said in a low voice, "The first step of this plan is very simple. Brother Mo, you've been in Eastern Qi for so many years, you should have a good relationship with some of the forces in Eastern Qi, right? These forces should be dissatisfied with the Sanskrit sect's actions, but no one dared to jump out to oppose it. They were probably still hoping that they could get away with it. Therefore, the first step is to make them despair completely, so that they know that no one will come to help them. At this time, the people from the Subodhi Monastery and the Great Light Temple have been integrated into the Heavenly Luo Temple, and their treatment is comparable to that of a core disciple. They are all people from the lower bound. Think of a way to leak this news to the martial arts forces in Eastern Qi, and then let them join forces to ask for help from these two people. Su Yun and Rama should not refuse, but the Heavenly Luo Temple will. This can be said to be a huge blow to the forces in Eastern Qi. I believe that after this, they should understand that luck is useless. At least in the territory of Eastern Qi, no one can help them." Mo Tianlin said, "What if the people from the Heavenly Luo Temple agree to it?" Chu Xiu spread out his hands and said, "Isn't it better if they agree? The Heavenly Luo Temple and the Sanskrit sect are fighting each other. Anyway, both of them have a grudge against me, so it's better for them to die together. As for the martial arts world in Eastern Qi, once these two sects are fighting, they naturally won't have time to care about you, so your crisis will naturally be resolved. Anyway, no matter what choice you make, you will not lose out. You just need to follow the first step of my plan. I will inform you of the next step later." As he said this, Chu Xiu turned his gaze to Luo Feiheng and said, "By the way, lend your dragon scale armor to Brother Mo for a period of time. Although he is secretly trying to sow discord in Eastern Qi, if someone in Eastern Qi secretly contacts the Sanskrit sect, Brother Mo will easily be in danger. With the dragon scale armor, at least martial immortals will not be able to hurt Brother Mo immediately." Luo Feiheng had been friends with Mo Tianlin for many years. Hearing this, he immediately threw the dragon scale armor to him and mumbled, "Be careful, don't die. After the matter is done, come and have a drink with us." Mo Tianlin took the dragon scale armor and chuckled. He said, "Don't look down on me. If I can't even handle such a small matter, then I have been the family head for so many years for nothing." Although Mo Tianlin's achievements were nothing compared to the Kunlun devil cult, as the family head of the Mo family, he was definitely not a mediocre person. Ever since he took over the Mo family, Mo Tianlin swept away the rigid rules of the Mo family, got rid of the abuses, and nurtured new forces. In just a few years, the Mo family had been reborn. Previously, the Mo family was at the bottom of the 9 great clans. However, after Mo Tianlin took over the position of the family head, the Mo family was already in the lower middle class. In another 2 generations, it was not impossible for the Mo family to become the upper class. After returning to the Mo family, Mo Tianlin used his son's 1-month birthday as an excuse to send invitations to all the major forces in eastern Qi. Although Luo Feiheng ridiculed Mo Tianlin's plan to expand his family, it was indeed very effective. Over the years, he had more than a dozen children, and any one of them could be randomly picked out as an excuse to celebrate his 1-month birthday. Moreover, unlike Chu Xiu, who attracted hatred, Mo Tianlin had a gentle personality, and no one could find fault with him. He had a good reputation in eastern Qi. Although most of the martial arts forces in eastern Qi thought that Mo Tianlin was making a big fuss about his son's 1-month birthday, they still came to show respect to Mo Tianlin. For example, the Ying family of Xianxia, a martial immortal like the patriarch of the Ying family, would naturally not come, but they still sent Ying Bailu. At the gate of the Mo family, Mo Tianlin personally stood at the gate to welcome them. I am very grateful that Daoist Ling Yunzi has come personally. Please come in, come in. I heard that the son of Patriarch Chen is going to be engaged to the eldest daughter of the Shengguan family. Congratulations, when the time comes, our Mo family will definitely prepare a big gift. Brother Ying, long time no see, your cultivation has improved again. After welcoming everyone into the living room, Mo Tianlin waved his hand and directly ordered his subordinates to close the door. Everyone present was stunned, and they did not know what Mo Tianlin meant. Moreover, it did not seem like Mo Tianlin was going to celebrate his son's 1-month birthday today. There was no banquet in the living room, and there were no performing dancers or servants. Mo Tianlin stood up and bowed to everyone present. Everyone should have guessed that I didn't call all of you here today to celebrate my son's full moon. There are some things I need to discuss with all of you. I believe everyone has heard about the Sanskrit's actions. They are extremely overbearing, and they do not follow any rules. Apart from sect leader Lu of the real martial sect, who has not been threatened by the Sanskrit, who has not been blocked and threatened by the Sanskrit? Although Ning Xuanji did not return to the real martial sect, his appearance in the mortal world was still a deterrent. No matter how overbearing the Sanskrit was, they would not dare to be overbearing to the real martial sect. Therefore, although the Sanskrit did not explicitly say that the real martial sect did not have to hand over their disciples, they were not blocked and threatened like other sections. Lu Chonglu quickly said, "Everyone, although the Sanskrit sect did not threaten the true martial arts sect, the true martial arts sect is also dissatisfied with their overbearing actions. Although the real martial sect was not threatened, everyone present was a victim." Lu Chonglu dared not show off after getting the upper hand. The patriarch of the Chen family, one of the 9 great clans, said helplessly, "What can we do even if the Sanskrit is overbearing? Who asked him to be so strong? I have asked around. The Sanskrit is the top sect among the Daoist sections. The Sanskrit sect leader is a peak martial immortal of the 9th heaven. Even if we are dissatisfied, what can we do?" Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "Everyone, if you think like that, then you're too pessimistic. Do we cultivate the martial Tao just to be slaughtered by others? So what if the Sanskrit is powerful? The Sanskrit is not the most powerful sect in the world." The patriarch of the Chen family said hesitantly, "So, Patriarch Mo, do you have a plan?" Mo Tianlin shook his head and said, "I don't have a plan. I just have an idea. At least, we can't just sit here and wait for death, right? I received news that the remaining martial artists from the Great Light Temple and Subodhi Monastery have joined the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple. I heard that their positions are not low, and they are comparable to the direct descendants. We and the Buddhist sect are martial artists from the lower realm. They can't just ignore us when we are in danger, can they? Most importantly, I found out that the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple was already at odds with the Sanskrit when it was still in the Daoist Ocean. It's the same in the lower realm now. If we can persuade the Heavenly Luo Treasure Temple to help us, won't we be saved? The people present looked at each other. They were tempted. If Mo Tianlin were to ask them to stand up against the Sanskrit sect, there was no way they would agree to it. Even if they were angry and aggrieved, they would not send themselves to their deaths at such a time. However, he only asked them to work together to get on good terms with Su Yun and Rama. If they were careful, they might not be noticed by the Sanskrit. It would be much safer. The Chunyang Dao sect's Ling Yunzi was the first to step forward and say, "I am willing to go with you, Patriarch Mo." You're tuning in to the Unparalleled SwordWill YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.